በመቀጠል የተከበሩ አቶ ደርሶ ጎና
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank also His Excellency the Prime Minister for being here to respond to our questions. I'll pose my questions. Our country, Ethiopia, to clear it from destructive forces, the government is engaged in law enforcement operations, and for the leadership you gave and for the victory that we had, I would want to say congratulations to you, Prime Minister, and also to protect the sovereignty of the country, our army, the pride of Ethiopia, would want to pay my tribute with honor. Excellency, Prime Minister, our country has been suffering from terrorist acts of TPLF and the measures taken against those acts of terrorism is there, and we recognize that, we're in approval of that, but I have the following questions first. The perpetrators that engaged to destroy the constitutional order and system of the country and engaged in lots of terrible crimes and attacking our military force and also sending criminal and terrorist groups all over the country, and the greedy, corrupt TPLF, just like ICIS, and also the Nigerian Boko Haram and the Somali Al-Shabaab. Why is it that we have not yet designated it as a terrorist organization? And secondly, the attack against our northern division of our army, the high military officials, high-ranking army officials, why is their case being handled by the High Court? Why is it not being handled by a special military court? And thirdly, in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of reform work in the army. A lot of work has been done to make it free of political influences. However, during the attack against the military, those involved were part of the military from the main office, even here in Ethiopia. So how successful has our reform work been in the army? And fourth, the traitor and Banda TPLF has been engaged with several acts of crimes, but the government gave peace chance and handled the case with a lot of patience. However, the patience of the government, they say, has given these terrorist organization time to organize, to engage in such evil acts of attack. If you'd elaborate. Thank you. Honorable Wizoro Mesaret Gitacho. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to thank His Excellency the Prime Minister for being here to answer our questions. Excellency Prime Minister, the very fast campaign that we just engaged in, and I congratulate you for the victory, and also the Amhara region militia and our army. We take pride in the victory, and I would read my question first. At the moment in Ethiopia, the traitors are engaged in lots of destruction, and many civilians have died, and this has caused severe psychological pressure on the country. So, and also they attacked our army forces that did not expect the attack in any way. They have killed many. So what's the government doing to make sure that they face justice at a military court? And secondly, those groups that want to dismantle the country and engaging in acts of genocide, these are TPLF and Onagshane, and this has been very clear to everybody. Accordingly, why have not we yet designated it as a genocide organization, and how are we going to hold them legally accountable? And thirdly, the extremist TPLF group, the actions taken against it, though, was very successful in a very small amount of time, but rocket attacks against Bahada, Gondar, and Eritrea, and this has continued. How are we going to stop these acts of violence? Thank you. Honorable Ato Mesfin Meshasha. Thank you. I want to thank also the Prime Minister for being here to respond to our questions. I will read my question. Our country being engaged in a path of change, and works have been made to disrupt our efforts of development, and evil forces are engaged in acts of violence, forcing the government to take actions. However, when the government's attention is focused on the northern part of Ethiopia, there could be other forces from within and outside that want to take action against our huge projects. How prepared are we to protect ourselves? Thank you, and Honorable Ato Zewdu Kabere. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First of all, for the attack against our northern division of our army by internal traitors, for the work, for the resolute leadership that you gave, and also for the powerful victory that we registered. I honor you for that. Pose my question. I'll read it first. In order to reverse the development activities that were engaged in, various acts of violence has been conducted by TPLF and its friends, but it has not been successful. But recently, in various parts of Ethiopia, many civilians have been killed. Your Excellency Prime Minister, these destructive forces that operate under TPLF and also TPLF leaders, after going to Tigray, they're engaged in all sorts of evil acts all around the country. And they were preparing themselves for a war, but should we have given them ample time to prepare for the evil acts? And secondly, the acts of violence that they were engaged in with dreams to assume power, to come back to power, and they're engaged into all sorts of divisive forces. And also the destructive media works that they're engaged in, we fear that it might cause disturbance in our relationship internationally. So what is being done to avert that? And thirdly, TPLF, in the name of democracy and federalism, it had hid themselves, posing itself as working for the country, but disguising itself under ethnic organizations. It's been engaged in destructive acts all over. This has been very clear. So accordingly, the government, why don't we designate it as a terrorist organization? Thank you.
Honorable members of the House, I would like to thank you for giving me the chance to respond to your questions. The questions raised are directly related to the situations we're in at the moment, but for the past 2.5 years we have been in the journey of reform, and it has been in several challenges. And I will also highlight on where we are right now, and I believe that's important. Most of the questions talk about the stance of the government saving the lives of citizens, and these are questions of livelihood. As much as possible, if not everything, I'll try to show you how it looked like from the beginning. First of all, in the past 27 years, the inhuman treatments that took place in the country and the thirst for democracy and good governance in our country is definitely not what I will be covering, because the House knows it very well, despite the fact that the people might from time to time forget what they've been into. I'm sure they will remember, and I will not talk much about that. 1 or 2 months after the reform will be the timeline where I'll begin my narration. As you may remember, 2.5 years ago, a month or two before the reform, there were several conflicts, expropriations taking place in the country, and burying several bodies in one hole, suppressing and subjecting people to cruelty. It was widely observed. Following the reform, we have faced several challenges. The trend that has continued till day, the people who graduated from the same college are causing these acts, and we have to remember this background. Within that time, there were several complainings, warnings, and the tactic they used was to make the people worry, to to arrest a lot of people altogether and to suppress the situation. For example, during the time of the celebration of Recha, the institution that existed to safeguard the country would print so many flags of opposing teams and make them carry it on the street, and would arrest them and use it as a context. And other locations, they will arrest a lot of people for carrying a flag that doesn't have the emblem. This affected the need for the people for change. The need for change did not stop that need. Because of that, right before the reform, there were discussions and attempts for a coup. That discussion for coup d'etat, when it was heard by Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, said, "I'm here to serve. There is no need for a coup d'etat. If you think you don't need Hailemariam, I'm ready to leave my chair at any time," and said there's no need for it, and discussed it with the relevant people. And the rest of us were saying, this is not a coup d'etat, this is a coup of a single person. How does a government coup itself? How do you coup your own intelligence? How do you wage a coup d'etat against yourself? There is no need for such discussions. It can easily be done. That was the discussion at the time. And from among them, there were individuals that did not support the issue. And the discussion of the coup d'etat was reversed. And the discussion started on who the person will be succeeding Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn. In order to ensure the next person will be their favorite person, there was a list of people on whom an active surveillance was done to see if they can be capable. So behind our back, with us knowing, they were surveilling us. There was a car right outside of my gate following me to my office, and it was there wherever I go. Not hidden, but in public. This was also the same for other comrades. There was no need to worry much. You don't need to spend fuel on us. There are several other matters that you need to worry about, not us. But it didn't stop there. There were more tensions, for instance, in Oromia office, the president's office, and the office of OPDO. All the towers were surrounded by shotguns. There were patrols on our gates, or the buildings around us were surrounded by surveillance. During the time, few persons sat and discussed. There could be killings at any time. The struggle we started should not be interrupted. We assumed as if we were killed, as if we were finished. We documented a video that said the government is oppressing us, is going to kill us, and so on. And we kept those videos with people close to us, and we told them to release the video as soon as if those things happen. It was clear that a danger could occur at any time. Following the surveillance, we did a discussion, we had a discussion with the rulers of EPRDF, and they released an order for arrest. This was 5-10 days before our election. It was an order to arrest. It was written. All this was intended towards removing the people wanted and to put in place persons that look like governments but puppets. Were anti this activity, and many were following the situation closely, and most of them were futile. The Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister had the desire for reform and for the reform to be successful. Not only that, since there were people coming and going between the two groups, we were sending the information they want to hear, and we were also learning about what they were doing, and it gave us time to prepare. When we moved to the election, the first election under EPRDF, for the first time in history, was directed towards brainwashing and changing the minds of people through evaluations. We're assembling a lot, but there was no fruit in those meetings. And on the day of the election, we were discussing on the criteria for election. As you might have heard, it was full of debate. It was nothing less than the war we're having at the moment. And the assembly of the junta was fighting from the side, did a widespread activity, and at a time around 10 p.m. they said we won the election and started celebrating. Before that,
it is in our dead body.
They said it's only in our dead body that these people will come to position. Everywhere you go, wherever they were dancing. After doing that, they faced an unprecedented loss, and those members of EPRDF that wanted change, reform, spearheaded the activities. EPRDF had a lot of discussions, debates to just elect one person. When we met in 4 months in Awasa, I mean, a person's perception won't change that quick. In 10 minutes, except for one person, the remaining 100% voted in just 4 months' time. But one voice was given to me. I voted for my friends. The remaining 100% voted. What does it mean? 3 months prior to that, there was not the need for that kind of debate. Had that been necessary 3 months after that, when there were votings, they would not have given their voices. I would like to make this a background for the House. The second one, after the reform, and after the reform leaders came to power, the special force was under oppression and wanted to do arrestings, surveillances, and so on. And the people of Ethiopia were oppressed and had hatred. And there were oppositions at the time. And in that situation,
የምናደርግ ከሆነ
If we did reform in the country at that time the way it was done before, we would have destroyed each other.
የተበደለና በደልና ግፍ የሚጠላ ነገር ግን
Some were oppressed, others were privileged,
የህዝብ እልቂት ያጋጥማል።
and because the other group did not have weapons, there would have been killings in the people. So we said, let's have a reform.
ከታጠቀ ኃይል ጋር
Let's not have conservative views.
ጭቅጭቅ ንትርክ
Let's avoid debates, unnecessary debates, and let's change the narrative.
እናጥፋችሁ አንበላቸው።
So we said, let's not say we'll destroy you because you cause damage.
የደረሰበት መዓት
We
በሁለት
said
መንገድ ሊሽር ይችላል። አንድም በይቅርታ አልያም
the damage could be averted in two ways. One is vengeance, the other one is through
በደሎቻችንን ረስተን በመደመር በወንድማማችነት በፍቅር
giving a
በይቅርታ
leeway.
እንሻገር።
We said, let's give them,
ያለፈውን በደል እንተው ይቅራል።
let them say
ያለፈውን በደል
sorry.
ካነሳን እግሩ የተቆረጠ አለ።
If we raise the problems of the past, they were
አባት ያጣ አለ።
subject to many cruelty, that lost their fathers, their mothers.
በመንግስት ምሬት ተሰደው በየባህር የቀሩ ሰዎች
And
አሉ።
there are so many people
ይሄ
that
ሁሉ
left the country
በደለኛ
and died in the ocean,
በየአካባቢው
fleeing the
የበቀል
government.
እርምጃ ከወሰደ
If we take
መተላለቅ ስለሚመጣ
vengeance, of course there will be
በደሉን አፍነን
mass death.
ሰላም ፍቅር
So
እንዲኖር
let's come
ብንሰራ
to
ይሻላል።
agreement, peace,
የመጠፋፋት
and
ፖለቲካ
love.
አልጠቀመንም።
The politics of
በየመንግስታት
hatred
ሲቀየሩ
never helped us.
ከዜሮ መጀመር ኢትዮጵያን ወደ
Starting
ኋላ
from
እያስቀራል
zero is pulling
ይቅር
Ethiopia backwards.
ብለን
So we said,
በብዙ መድረኮች
let this be it.
በብዙ መንገድ ለህዝባችን
And all
ለዚህ ኃይል
the
እንመለስ።
different sessions we had, we communicated the
ካልን
same to the
በኋላ
people.
ቀጣይ
And
ስራ
after
መሆን
saying that,
ያለበት
the next
በሁሉም
action should be
ለሁሉም ከሁሉም የሆነ ሀገረ መንግስት
an
እንገንባ።
all-inclusive government, a comprehensive one.
በሁሉም ስንል
When we say by
እያንዳንዱ ሰው
all, each and every
ጠጠር
person
ኮንትሪቢዩት
should
የሚያደርግበት
contribute a grain of sand.
ለሁሉም ስንል
When we say
ተጠቃሚና
for all,
የማይጠቀም ባለቤትና
there
ባዕድ
should not be
ጎረቤትና
discrimination
ዋነኛ
between
የሚባል
who
ሳይኖር
benefits and who
ሁሉም
don't,
በኩል
honor
የሚሳተፍበት ይሁን።
and not.
ለሁሉ ስንል ደግሞ
And
ሁሉም
when we say for
የሚገለገልበት
all,
ነው።
we
እኩል።
said so that everyone can benefit
ይሄን ሀገረ
equitably.
መንግስት እንገንባ።
So this is what we wanted to
ጥያቄ
develop.
ስናነሳ
And when we raised the
ይህ
question,
ስብከት ነው፣ ሰባኪዎች
they
ናቸው።
said, you're preaching.
ሀገር
This
መምራት
is just a
በስብከት
preach.
አይቻልም።
You cannot rule a country
ሀገር
by
መምራት
preaching.
እንደኛ ፊት ለፊት
Ruling a
የምንለውን
country,
እያልን
they
ከኋላ
said,
ማፋጀት ካልሆነ በስተቀር
should be
ስለ
saying
ፍቅርና
what you
ስለ
say to the
መደመር
people
እየተናገሩ
and
ሀገር
killing
መምራት
at the back.
አይቻልም
And they said, you cannot talk
አሉ።
about love and
መንግስት
rule a
ደካማ ነው
country.
አሉ።
And they said the government is weak in the
ደካማ
end.
መንግስት ነው። በእርግጥ መንግስት ደካማ ነው።
Perhaps the government,
መንግስት
a
ማለት
government is
የግለሰቦች
weak. A government
የግል ብቃት የግለሰቦች
is
የግል
the
እውቀት
coming
ማለት
together
ሳይሆን
is
የተቋማት
not the
ጥንካሬ ማለት ነው።
individual's strengths,
ተቋሙን
rather it's the
እንዳልሆነ
strengths of
አድርገህ ከሰራህ በኋላ
institutions.
መንግስት
And
ደካማ
after
ነው የሚል
developing
ክስ
an institution
እምብዛም ውሃ
in a
የሚቋጥር
wrong way, of course,
ተቋም የሌለው
you can
ማንኛውም
say the
መንግስት
government
ደካማ
is
ነው።
weak. A government that
ግለሰቦች
doesn't have
ምንም ቢሆኑ ምን
institutions
ማለት
is
ነው?
weak, no matter what the
በዚህ
individuals
መንገድ
are.
የነበረው
Therefore,
ሁኔታ
on this
ለመቀየር
track,
የነበረው
in order to
ፍላጎት
change
እምብዛም
the
ተቀባይነት
existing
አላገኘም።
scenario, did not receive
ከዚህ ጋር ተያይዞ
commencement.
የተከበረው ምክር ቤት በጣም ብዙ
the
የፖለቲካ
honorable
ሰዎች፣
house, many politicians,
የሚዲያ ሰዎች
media
ለምን ቀድሞ እርምጃ አልተወሰደም?
started
አልዘገየንም
asking
ወይ? እርምጃ
why
በመወሰዱ
hasn't the
ዋጋ
government
አልከፈልንም
taken
ወይ?
actions immediately?
ቀድሞ እርምጃ መውሰድ
Was
ይቻል
it
አልነበረም
not
ወይ
possible
የሚል
to take
ጥያቄዎች
actions at
ይነሳሉ።
the time? There are questions like
ይህ
this
ጉዳይ
raised from time to time.
በመፈለግና በማድረግ
This
መካከል
issue has
ያለን
differences
ልዩነት
between
ካለመገንዘብ
want
ይመጣል።
and action.
መሻት ይቻላል፣
We can
ማለም
always wish
ይቻላል፣
for something. We
መፈለግ
can dream.
ይቻላል።
We can
ያን መከወን ደግሞ ብቃት ይፈልጋል።
we can do that,
ብቃት
but
ማለት ተቋማዊ ብቃት ነው።
undertaking it requires institutional
የኢትዮጵያ
capacity.
ቀንደኛ የፖለቲካ ችግር
The major political challenge we have as a country,
የገዢውም የሚፎካከረውን ፓርቲዎች
both on the
ወይም
side of the
የፖለቲካ ሰዎች
ruling
ዋነኛው ችግር
and the opposition
አንድን ነገር
and the
ከማድረጋችን በፊት
individuals, is before we do something,
ጥንቅቅ ያለ የኃይል አስተላለፍ ትንተና ማድረግ አለመቻል።
we don't have analysis of power.
አንድ መንግስት፣ አንድ ፓርቲ
One government, one party
ማንኛውም ስራዎች ውስጥ
in all its
አሸናፊ ሆኖ
activities
እንዲወጣ የሚያደርገው
can only be
በቂ
a
የሆነ
winner
በእውቀት ላይ የተመሰረተ
when it has
በእውነተኛ
sufficient
ዳታ
knowledge-based,
ግብዓትነት ላይ
data-based
የኃይል አሰላለፍ ትንተና ያስፈልጋል።
power
በውስጥ ያለው
analysis.
ኃይል ምን ይመስላል?
What's the
በውጭ
power
ያለው
within the
ኃይል ምን
inside
ይመስላል?
and
ይሄ
in the
ኃይል ውስጥ
outside?
ግጭት ቢፈጠር
And if there are
ምን አይነት
conflicts,
ሽንፈት ምን አይነት ድል ሊያጋጥም
what are the
ይችላል
wins
ብሎ
and losses?
መተንተን በእጅጉ
And these
ያስፈልጋል።
require analysis.
የኃይል አስተላለፍ ትንተና ስለማይሰራ
Since
ሰው
we don't do
ይነሳና
that,
በሶስት ወር መንግስት ሆናለሁ ይላል።
a person will just rise up and say, I'll be a government.
ጠላትን በትክክል
In order to be a government, you need to understand your enemies. You need to understand yourself and the capabilities of your enemy, identifying your capacity and how you can wear down your enemy.
ዝም ብሎ ሰብሰብ ብሎ ፓርቲ ነን
You cannot just assemble and become a party in just 6 months and say you'll win.
ለዚህ ነው
It's
ባለፉት
just
40
a wish.
ዓመታት ብዙ ፓርቲዎች
That's
ኢትዮጵያ
why
ውስጥ
in the past
እየተፈጠሩ
40 years
ማሸነፍ
we've
ያልቻሉ።
had political parties that never succeeded, that never made it
የኃይል
to power.
አስተላለፍ ትንተና
So
በደንብ
the
ካልተሰራ
power
በስተቀር
ranking
ግን
analysis
የምንመኘው እንጂ
requires
የምናረጋግጠው የምንጨብጠው
deep
አይሆንም።
analysis. It will
ከዚህ
just be a
በተጨማሪ
wish otherwise.
የሁኔታ ትንተና ያስፈልጋል።
Moreover,
ምንድን ነው ያለው
we
ሁኔታ?
need to also have
መንግስት
situational
የሚባለው
analysis.
አካል ምን ይመስላል?
The institution called government, what does it look
ተቃዋሚ
like?
የሚባለው አካል ምን ይመስላል?
What does oppositions look like as an institution?
አካባቢ ሀገራት ምን ይመስላሉ? እዚህ
What
ውስጥ
do the
ምን
neighboring
አይነት
countries
ኦፕሬሽን
look like?
ብናካሄድ ስኬታማ
What kind
መሆን
of
እንችላለን
operations will
ተብሎ
be successful?
የሁኔታ ትንተና ይሰራል።
We need to have such kind of
እነዚህን
situational,
ጉዳይ በዝርዝር
situational
የተገነዘበ
analysis.
ሰው እርምጃ
A person who
ወደ
understands
የሚል
it
ጥያቄ አያነሳም።
and that way will never ask the question that the
Yes.
actions are
ለምን ያላችሁ
delayed.
እንደሆነ
Why?
እኔ በግሌ
As an individual,
እንኳን ሀገሬን እንኳን የሰጣችሁኝን ኃላፊነት
let alone my
በወጣ
country,
ይቅርና
let alone the responsibility you
ራሴንና
gave me,
ቤተሰቤን መከላከል
I
የማልችልበት
am
ፖዚሽን ላይ ነው።
I was in a position where I was unable to
ለምሳሌ
protect myself and my family.
እናንተ ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር ሆነ በህገ መንግስቱ መሰረት ሀገር አገልግል ብላችሁ የሾማችሁኝ ቀን
When the day you made me the
የደህንነት
prime
ስሙ
minister
ከኔ ጋር
to make
የነበሩ
me serve the country,
ሶስት ግለሰቦች
the Ministry of Intelligence and
በጥበቃ
3
ስራ
other
ላይ የነበሩ
people
ሶስት ግለሰቦች ይዘህ ቤተ መንግስት መግባት አትችልም ተባለ።
were denied
እኔ
access
የግል ጥበቃዎች ላይ ማዘዝ የማልችል ሰውዬ ነው እናንተ
to
ለምን
the
ሀገር
palace.
አትጠብቅም እያላችሁ ጥያቄ የምታቀርቡት?
and I said, if you say these
አትችልም።
people are not fit, why
እኛ
do you even
የሰጠንን
trust me?
ጠባቂ ብቻ የሚጠብቅህ ተብሎ
They said it's
ጠባቂዎቼ
only
እንዳይገቡ
the
ተከለከሉ።
protection
ይሄ
we
ጠቅላይ
give you
ሚኒስትሩን
that
ቁጥጥር
has to prevail.
ቢሮ የምሰራበት
The office I work in
ቢሮ ቁልፍ ያለው በእነዚህ የደህንነት ጠባቂዎች ነው።
is in the hands of this
ከፍተው
intelligence
የሚያስገቡኝ
security.
አስወጥቶ የሚቆልፉብኝ እነሱ ናቸው።
They open and close the door whenever I walk in and out.
ካሜራ ቢኖር መቅረጫ ቢኖር ማንኛውም
I was
ጉዳይ
even
ቢኖር
unaware if there was
በሌሎች ሀገራት
surveillance
እንደተለመደው
camera recording in my room.
ካውንተር ሰርቪላንስ አሰርቼ አጸድቼ ስራ ልሰራ
I
አልችልም። ምክንያቱም
was
ጠዋት ጠዋት
unable
ሳልገባ
to do a counter
ገብተው የፈለጉትን
surveillance
አስተካክለው
to check
በፈለጉት
my
ሰዓት መጥተው
office.
ነው ግባ የሚሉኝ።
They will just open the door in the morning, allow me to go in the office and go out. I was unable to discuss using my phone. I couldn't call Mr. Damaka for a discussion and so on. My office was
የሚጠበቀው ብቻ
controlled.
ሳይሆን ቢሮዬም በሰዎች
Moreover, my office in general was under the control of other
የቤቴ ዋናው ቁልፍ
forces.
በእነዚህ ኃይሎች ነው።
Even
አስገብተው
the key to
የሚቆልፉብኝ
my
እነሱ
house
ናቸው። ጠዋት
was controlled by
ከፍተው
these
የሚያስወጡኝ
people.
እነሱ ናቸው።
They opened the door and closed the door
እዚህ
morning
ውስጥ
and
ነው
night.
እናንተ ሀገር እርምጃ አልወሰደም አልተከላከለም።
This is the
የሚል
scenario I
ጥያቄ
was
ብትጀምሩ
in
ማለት
when
ነው።
you said, why did he not
የእናንተን
take
ደህንነት
actions?
ሳይሆን የራሴና
So
የልጆቼን
I
ደህንነት
was
ማረጋገጥ የምችልበት
unable to
ፖዚሽን ላይ
safeguard the safety of my family, let
በዚህ ግን
alone.
አያበቃም። ወታደር
you.
ስለነበርኩኝ እስቲ አንድ ስቴፕ
It didn't stop there.
ውጭ ለማምለጥ እንኳን
I was
የምችልበት
member of
መንገድ
an
ካለ
army,
ግቢውን
so I started thinking if
ለማየት
there were
ፈልጌ
ways where I
በአካባቢ
can
ያሉ ሰዎች
escape.
ቢሮዬና
and
ቤቴ
started
ደጅ
looking
የማውቅ
around
ያለው
the
አካባቢ
compound.
ግቢዬን ለማወቅ ግቢ እንመልከት ስላቸው ይሄ እኮ
And I
አልተለመደ
asked if
ማለት
I can look around the
Prime
compound. They
Minister
said
ግቢ ማየት
this is
ማለት
not
አልተለመደም።
usual for the prime minister
ከቢሮ ቤት ብቻ ነው።
to
አርብ
look around the compound.
ካስገባን
They
ሰኞ
said
መተን
you go
እስከምንወስድ
to the office
ቤት መቀመጥ።
and to
ቤት
your
ማለት
house.
ቤት ነው
And they
እንጂ
said
በረንዳም
when they
አይቻልም።
said your house, it meant inside the house, not even
አይ
in in
እኔ
in,
እንደዛ
in,
አይነት
in,
ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር አይደለሁም። አካባቢ
in the premise.
ቸገራለሁ ብዬ
I
በግድ
said I'm
ግቢውን
not only prime minister. I need
ማለት
to look
ከቤቴ
around
ውጭ ያለውን
my
ግቢ ለማየት።
compound. I need to see what's
ይህ
outside.
ግቢ የታወቀ ክፍለ ከተማ የለውም።
This compound
የታወቀ
never
ቀበሌ የለውም።
had
ግን ደንበኛ መንደር
identified
አለ።
subcity, qabale.
በየአጥሩ ስር ላስቲክ አለ፣ ደሳሳ ጎጆ አለ፣
but there were
የጭቃ ቤት አለ፣
plastics,
ትልልቅ ሰዎች
small
አሉ፣
houses
ህፃናት
around
አሉ፣
it,
ሴቶች አሉ።
elderly, children,
መንደር
and
ይሁን
those type of
ቤተመንግስት
people
ይሁን ህንፃ ነው።
around it. So it was not clear whether
ዙሪያውን
this was a
ስትዞሩ አጥሩ
palace
በሙሉ
or
ሰው ነው።
just a random house.
እነዚህ ሰዎች
It was
የስራ
surrounded by
ድርሻቸው
normal
ምንድን ነው?
people, and I started asking,
ያደርጋሉ
what are the
የሚለው
roles
ጉዳይ
of these people? What are they
ግልጽ
doing here? It was never clear.
በየቦታው ሽንት ቤት አለ፣
There
በየቦታው
were
ጎጆ ቤት
toilets
አለ፣ ላስቲክ
everywhere,
ቤት
there
አለ፣
were
ልክ የጎዳና
cottages
የሚመስል
everywhere
አጥር
in the
ተንተርሰው የተሰሩ
compound,
የላስቲክ
as if it
ደሳሳ
was
ቤቶች አሉ፣
on the street.
ሰው ያለባቸው።
No one lives in those houses.
ስለዚህ ቢሮና ቤት ብቻ ሳይሆን ግቢ
So it
ሮጦ
wasn't
ለማምለጥ
a
በፍጹም
house
አይቻልም።
and office,
በአደገኛ ሁኔታ ውስጥ
but I was also under a very dangerous situation.
ተገነዘቡ።
And that's what I
አንድ ስቴፕ ከግቢ
understood.
ውጭ ልመልከት ብዬ ሳይ
So I had to
በዚህ በኩል
look
ጥይት ቤት የሚባል
outside.
በመቶዎች የሚቆጠሩ ሰዎች ያሉበት፣
There was
በዚህ
a
በኩል
place
ፓርላማ፣
where they stored
በጣም
ammunitions on the one side, on the
በዚህ
other
በኩል
there were
ጋራዥ፣
protections, on the
የቤተ
other
መንግስት
side
ጋራዥ
there
ተብሎ
was
በጣም በርካታ ሰዎች
a
ያሉበት፣
garage
ዝቅ
that
ዝቅ
has
ብሎ
a lot of
የብሔራዊ
people,
ደህንነት
and
ከህግ ውጭ
down there were a
ከአዋጅ ውጭ
national
ስፔሻል
intelligence
ወታደሮች
office
አሉ።
outside of
Special
the
force
law,
ያላቸው
the
ወታደሮች
constitution that has special forces.
ስለዚህ ከቢሮና ከቤት ቢመለጥ ከግቢ
If I
አይቻልም፣
escape
ከግቢ ቢመለጥ
my
ዙሪያውን
office and my
እንዳልኳችሁ ነው።
house, I can skip the
ባጭሩ
compound.
ዘመናዊ
Even the
እስር ቤት
compound
ውስጥ
is very difficult
ያለ
to leave.
ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር መሆኔ
So the
አወቅሁ።
prime minister was basically stranded.
ከዚህ እስር ቤት ራሴን ነፃ ለማውጣትና
In
ሀገርና
order to
ኢትዮጵያን
free
ኃላፊነት
myself
ለመወጣት
from
በተለይ
this
የተከበረው ምክር
cage,
ቤት
honorable
የሚጠብቃቸው
House,
ሪፎርሞች
in order
ለማሳካት
to fulfill
የመጀመሪያው
the
ስራ
reforms you are
ከቤተሰብ ጋር
requesting,
መመካከር ነበር። ቤተሰብ
the first
ከዛ በፊት
discussion need to
በስደት
be
ስለነበሩ
made with my family.
ያለው ሁኔታ ካየን በኋላ ይሄ ቤት እስር ቤት ነው፣
And we said, well,
እዚህ ተቀምጠን በቲቪ የወጣን ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትር
this
መሆን
is
አንችልም፣
prison.
ስራ ይፈልጋል፣
We
ሪስክ
can't go
አለውና
out of here and
ወደ
rule a
መጣችሁበት
country.
ተመለሱ በሚል ተስማምተን ቤተሰብ
So
ወደ
we
መጣበት መልሰን
decided and
በየቀኑ
sent family back home.
መታፈንም መታገትም መገደልም ሊያጋጥም እንደሚችል በማሰብ
And
ነው
considering that there would be
የመጀመሪያው
killings,
ወር በስራ
suppressions, or anything, we
እንደ
started the
ጠቅላይ
first
ሚኒስትር ሳይሆን በእስር ቤት ያለ
activities.
አንድ
Not as a prime
ነገር
minister,
ግን ወጥቶ
but
በሚዲያ
as an
መታየት የሚችል
individual
ሰው።
in prison, but who can appear in public on the
ይሄን
media.
ኃይል ይሄንን መንግስት ወይም በዚህ ሰው የሚመራው መንግስት ነው ለውጥ አታመጣም ወይ የሚል ጥያቄ የሚነሳ
You're asking this
ከዚያ
person
በኋላ ከጓደኞቻችን ጋር የነበረው ምክክር
to create a
በተለይ
reform.
ከምክትል ጠቅላይ ሚኒስትሩ ጋር
And our comrade,
ህዝቡ
including
ይሄን ይፈልጋል።
the deputy prime
እኛ
minister,
ያለንበት ሁኔታ
we started
ይህን
analyzing our situation.
ሀሳቦች ማሰብ መጻፍ እንችላለን።
We said we can write and raise ideas,
ለሚባለው ብናወያይ
but if we
ሀሳባችንን የሚያሳካ
start discussions with others, it will only reverse our ideas and actions. And we said, how can we make the change or reform people are asking for?
ሳንዱች አፕሮች እንከተል።
And we said, let's follow a sandwich approach.
ምናምኑን ለጊዜው እንተወውና ከላይ ሀሳብ እንደ
Let's do away with the conventional assembly council,
አመራር በዚህ
and we said the central administration should follow this approach, and we should communicate with the public and try to understand what they want.
እኔ በጣም ፈጣን ነገር ነው የምነግራችሁ በየቀኑ የሚደረግ
I'm expediting
በዚሁ አግባብ
the story.
ህዝባችን ጋር እንገናኝ፣ ህዝቡን
We
እናድምጥ፣
said,
ለህዝብ
let's
ሀሳባችንን
communicate with the
እንስጥ፣
people, let's sell our ideas to the people,
ወታደራችን ይሁን
and
ጠባቂያችን ይሁን፣
let's make
ህዝቡ
the
ለውጥ
public the
እንዳይቀለበስ
guardian,
የሚቆም ይሁን፣
and let's make
እኛ
sure
ደግሞ
the people
በድፍረት
will stand
ወደ ህዝብ እየወጣን
on the side of the
ሀሳቦቻችንን
reform,
ለህዝብ እናካፍላለን።
and let's also share our ideas.
ይህም ብለን
After
የመጀመሪያው
saying that,
ጉዞ ወደ ሶማሌ ክልል ነው የወሰንነው።
we made the first trip to Somali
ወደ
region.
ሶማሌ ክልል የወሰንበት ምክንያት
The
አሁን
reason
ያያችሁት
is because the current
መጀመሪያ
danger
የተዘጋጀው በሶማሌ ክልል ነው።
was first
የሰለጠነ
designed
ከ100,000
in
በላይ
Somalia.
የታጠቀ
More than
ልዩ ኃይል
30,000
ተደራጅቶ
trained,
ከላይ
armed
ተቀናጅቶ
special forces
ኢትዮጵያን
existed in that
የማፈራረስ
region
ህልሙ
with the
የመጀመሪያው
idea to
ታርጌት
dismantle
በዚያ
the
ክልል
country.
ከዚያ በተጨማሪ
Moreover,
ከለውጡ በፊት አንድ ሁለት ወር ውስጥ በጣም መፈናቀል
there were several displacements and killings
ያንን
before that, a month before that.
ሶማሌ ክልል ለመሄድ
So we said
ስንነሳ
we need to heal that. When we asked to go to Somali region, the intelligence head said, you can't
ሶማሌ
go.
ክልል መሄድ አትችልም አለኝ።
You can't
ለምን የሚል
go
ጥያቄ
to
ተነሳ።
Somali region. When I said why, he said,
ሊገል ስለሆነ
Al-Shabaab
ሶማሌ ክልል አትሄድም፣
is designing to kill you,
መሄድ አትችልም።
so you cannot go to Somali region.
አንደኛ እንደ
First
አጋጣሚ
of
ሆኖ
all,
መረጃ እንዴት ፋብሪኬት እንደሚደረግ በትንሹም ቢሆን
I have experience on how
ሁለተኛ የመረጃ ተቋማት
information is fabricated, and also
ውሳኔ የሚደግፉ መረጃ ማቅረብ እንጂ መወሰን አልነበረም።
this intelligence only had the responsibility of giving me information that helps me make decisions, not make decisions for me. And whenever I asked why, he said the justification is Al-Shabaab will kill you. And my response were two. One, please give me information that helps making decision. And two, you did the major task. Your task is to identify there is a group that wants to kill me. So I said, protect me from these killers and let me do my job. Had you not known about it, it would have made my life very difficult. That now you know it, so protect me and I will do my job. Then I went to Somalia region. We've had great time, we've discussed with the people. Coming back from Somalia region, the second trip was to Mekelle. The people of Tigray at the time, given the condition, were affected like any other member of the people. So we approached the people and to alleviate any danger, we started discussing with their language. So we went to Tigray region, sorry. I was never told there is a special force. I went there, we've had a discussion, and the power of the junta was surprised, shocked. The people of Tigray received us very well, and the youths were in need of reform, so they supported. That's when they understood the approach, the sandwich approach. And after Mekelle, they said, we need to stop this. If it continues like this, they will isolate the people and it will be very dangerous. They have had their own discussions. My next trip was to Ambo. It was said I can't go to Ambo because Oneg will kill me, or LF will kill me. A month before that, I was there to discuss with the people that we're going to win, that we're going to change, we're going to have a reform. And they said, there is a force that will kill you, so don't go to LF. I understood then. I said, it's not OLF or Al-Shabaab that will kill me. I said, it's the group within that will kill me. So we added additional forces and went to Ambo, security. We've had fruitful time in Ambo, and then we decided to go to Gondar and Bahar Dar. There was a Walqait committee, there were problems at the time, and they said, they plan to kill you, we have their plan, and they said, you can't go. Amara region administration were told to do the underlying activities, and we went. It wasn't only talking to people. The Walqait committee and the command committee, we sat them on a table and have had discussions, and from the discussion our disagreement between us and the intelligence grew, and they said, if you're having discussions with Walqait, you will not be having discussions with us. Following that, in the north, in the east, west, and also to some extent we've had discussions in Addis Ababa as well. So we started taking expedited decisions and actions. We started showing the people what they wanted to see. As you may remember, we were giving emergency news, breaking news saying we have released someone, we have done this and that.
One is political prisoners that were then released. After they were released, they conducted a meeting in Addis Ababa, and they held the flag without the star. They were thrown back to jail again, not even a week in freedom. They were thrown back to prison, and I said, no, you should let them go. It's not right. if we arrest people for taking a flag without a star, there was a lot of controversy, but they were freed. And then concerning Ato Andargacho Tsege, there was a request for his release. It was again very hot controversy involved. He said he's a dangerous person. He's facing trial, death penalty. There was a very strong resistance. Up until this moment, nobody knows who's the prime minister. The prime minister orders, issues an order, somebody throws it away. So we involved the Attorney General's office in this matter. So we made sure that Andargacho Tsege was released, and when that was done, the situation got worse. It's either you or us. Very hard controversy and conflict, actually. So I said we cannot continue like this. So leaders of security, governments with their own army, media, we cannot continue together. I decided that they need to be removed. So we decided to study the situation. Should we take measures on the defense force only or on the security apparatus only? If we do that on these two entities, how dangerous would it be? When we studied the situation in some countries, the security head and our army head were removed, and there was a lot of destruction in some African countries. We had to learn from history and devise a way to avert destruction. And so when we were forced to do is to remove governments under a government, and that the institutions should remain at an institutional level. What I want to make clear here is at the moment, General Samora, the army commander-in-chief, had done his level best to avert the coup d'etat. Even after the change, he was very supportive and had a spirit of support. It's very clear, something we cannot deny. Though he was in support, we had to change the situation, so we had to honorably lead him to retirement. So we removed the commander-in-chief and also the security head. The response was different. General Samora's response was much better. His spirit of cooperation was there, but the institution had to go through reform, so we had to take measure. After we took this action, the situation got worse and very clear. So the security head they stole various armaments and fled to Mekelle. What I want this parliament to understand is we don't even know what he took from that office. How much of the armament is stolen, we don't know, because the security entity had become a family entity and not really an organizational per se. What purchases have been done, where are the stored, nobody knows, no information whatsoever. When I was told that Al-Shabaab would kill, there were information sent to me, but I never open postal offices. I never do that because it could prove to be costly, dangerous. The institution cannot even report, the security apparatus cannot even report what its own head did. So lastly, as you know, during the parade in support in Addis, there was an attempt on my life. When what that was done, the police, the defense force, and the security all were there. A very, very close attempt on my life.
ስለሚችል ተቋማቱን
that could have
ብለን ስንፈትሽ
proven
ነው
costly.
ከደህንነቱ
It's also
ይሄ
when we made
መሳሪያ
that
እንዳለ
search, we
የደህንነት
find out
እንዳለ
that
ያወቅነው።
bombs,
እስከዛ ጊዜ
armaments
ድረስ
were
መረጃ
stolen
ነበር።
from the security office.
በዛም ጊዜ ቢሆን ጥርት ብሎ
Even then,
እንደዚህ አይነት
we didn't
መሳሪያ
know the exact type
ይሄን
of
ያክል ቁጥር ያለው
armaments,
ቢል
the number of armaments that was
ከእስራኤል
stolen,
የተገዛ
armaments bought from Israel,
ድምፅ የሌለው
silencing with silencing apparatus that could be used in assassinations. From that time onwards,
ከትግራይ ክልላዊ መንግስት ጋር ይህ ግለሰብ
this individual that used to be head of security office, we began conversing with the Tigrayan government, asking them at least he should return the armaments that he stole. And as you know, they have their own media, this individual, the Abiy media, using government funds, of course. And even in the palace, he has his own soldiers. If I want to travel outside, I don't know what can happen on the air. I cannot trust the airplane. So if I do not have a liberty for myself, what can I do? This must be clearly understood by the parliament. It was not something easy. Things that I have not mentioned yet. The reason why I'm disclosing it, that we all to know exactly what we went through, and everybody, including the Ethiopian people, have a right to know history. So we said, well, let's conduct SSR, Security Service Reform. So we started with INSA, Security Office, the police, the defense force, the financial intelligence were included, and the reform process. We attempted on that. When we did that, security apparatuses, they're not even existent. They are just family organizations, incapable family members gathered up in there. So it had to be literally demolished and redone. When we look at the defense force, doing the same would be problematic. So we wanted to gather as much data as possible to have a closer understanding, and the results indicated that the defense force it was very difficult to change the defense force within even the coming 5 years. For instance, in the defense force, the forced full generals from Tigray region, they constitute 60%, and from the entire other nation, it's 40%. This is the full-star generals. Going one step lower, major generals, that's lieutenant generals. The numbers is smaller. 50% of them were from Tigray region. One step lower, major generals, 45% from Tigray. Brigadier generals, 40% from one place. Colonels, 58% from one region. Lieutenant colonel, 66% from one region. One step lower, 53%. What does this mean? If I change the general, the colonel, and then the lower rank, so to bring a balanced army in the coming 10 years, it was quite impossible. From general to lower ranks, 55% are from Tigray region. Among the generals, okay, it could be because of experience, but lieutenant colonel, captain, 20 years is enough in an army career. In 20 years, he can become a captain, a colonel. There's no justification that would prevent that. So, but the work done, but even now, even 5 years, in 10 years, we cannot think of a reform, because potential leadership is expected to come out of a certain region. This would not benefit Tigray, it would not benefit Ethiopia.
ባለው የህዝብ ቁጥር ልክ
Tigray, as per the number of its population, must of necessity participate in defense forces, must protect its country, be it Tigray or Oromia or Amara or Benishangul, to get a bigger share would create the problem that we're facing now. It's not beneficial at all. So I just talked of high-ranking officials with ranks. When we look at other positions of authority, like in a defense headquarters, like divisions of people of leadership, 80% of them are from Tigray region. The first scenario was 55%. But those in position in offices, 80% of them, the staff in the headquarters, 80% from Tigray region. What does it mean? He knows what's the purchasing, training, communication, everything is controlled by people that come from one region. Let's go a bit lower level. From defense forces, there are other forces, divisions, you can say. The divisions that Ethiopia had, the leaders, 100% were from Tigray. Deputy leader, from 100% from Tigray. In all divisions. Not only this, like in the northern and east, it could be Amhara, like in logistics, but in the northern, the commander, deputy commander, logistics, administrator, all the 4 members of the committee are from Tigray. Why the north division? I would elaborate later. This is a division. Let's go even a step lower. Like subdivisions, mechanized and foot soldiers, 100% mechanized subdivisions, 100% are Tigrayans. Like the foot soldiers, 80% leaders are from Tigray region. So they don't actually lead, but just count number of generals. We're going a step lower, mechanized brigades, 85% are from Tigray. Foot soldiers, 80% from Tigray. Look at it from brigade up to the defense forces. It does not involve people from other regions. If we maybe say, let's look at the training department, in the 80% of it are Tigrayans. So if we bring in new people, because the trainers are from them, it could be problematic. So everybody needs to know of these facts, that this should not repeat in the future. As true professionalism must be taken into account, because it's not a parliament. It's constituting from every ethnic group may not be a must, but our army must have a representative picture, and this is constitutional. The constitution makes it mandatory. We have to build an army that looks like the country. Let's now look at the entire army, the strategic policies, the directives, the training manuals. We gathered these and began to look at it. I don't need to be a general, and nobody needs to be a commander. The army was built. The red book, 100%, is against the constitution, blatantly. The book says you protect the party. If revolutionary democracy is touched, stand up and fight. So all this idea of democracy in election is a farce. If there is no revolutionary democracy, you cannot see the Ethiopia that you want to see. They say the foundation of Ethiopia is the ideology of the party. So it's only when that ideology and that party exists that Ethiopia exists. So even if we have representatives from other ethnic backgrounds, it's quite useless because of the prevailing ideology. So the partisanship of the army, we found it to be very dangerous. I was very clear understanding, but trying to do something about it was something else. For instance, in Sidama region, when Olaitas were killed, the commander there is the general that assisted the destruction at the northern division, standing from the headquarters. Our Walaita and Sidamas do not kill each other. They have lived there for centuries. But it's the hierarchy, the apparatus. It has money, it has a mission, it incites violence, it creates killing of one another, and at the same time, it's that organ that is supposedly to enforce the law. In Ethiopia, the security apparatus in the past 2.5 years, the major perpetrators of violence, those that killed and destroyed property, there were 113 acts of incidents, violent incidents, 113, not including the recent ones. What does that mean? Every week there was preparation for war. The government was to cry, bury this, and then move on to the next burial service. It was purposely in an organized manner to stop any acts, any work of development. When all these transpired, when 113 conflicts transpired in almost all regions, but nothing happened in Tigray. They are not even ashamed of this. They say there's nothing going on in our region. Some external people, they say only peace exists only in Tigray region. It's true, but because the perpetrators are there themselves. So the wounds, they stir up wounds everywhere, created conflicts between people. It involved finance, training, dispatches, and the media is also there. The media says they speak in advance. Oromo killed Amaras and this and that, both in ordinary medias and social media, and some gullible people believe that and involve in further bloodshed acts. So to create ethnic conflicts and religious conflicts, they have done their level best. Have they succeeded? People have died, but their purposes has not been successful. They have created havoc in property, killed innocent civilians. If you consider that success. But not only that, if a person is displaced and leaves the country to Kenya, he goes to Kenya, some goes to Uganda, somewhere else, believing that the host country would receive them. But one got Jame, if he says I would go to Ambo, they say if the Ambo people are my people, if I get hungry, they would feed me. If I get sick, they would take care of me. That's why they goes there. If they don't have the site trust, they would not go there in the first place. So people that have gone there, lived together for centuries, lived together, intermarried, have been together, up and down together, these evil forces incited conflicts and fear among these groups of people in the past 2.5 years in Oromia. There were 37 conflicts, and Shashamene, Guliso, Bale was religious, and also Harage, Gujiwalaga, Chenaksan, and also in other places in the past. In these 37 conflicts, those that suffered, Amharas and other ethnic groups are there. There are many Oromos that the families were dismantled, father died, mother died, wife died. So this force, making Oromia a center of conflict and confusion, and creating conflict between Oromo and other people groups, and trying to bring religious conflict. But they claim that we fight for the sake of Oromos. And in 37 conflicts, when you look at the data, many Oromo mama has been left without a husband or without a father. Oromo has been made to fight against people that lived. This is a loss for Oromo, for Amara. It's a loss for the entire country. If anybody is to benefit from this, this is this evil force. In Amhara region, there had been 23 conflicts. In Kamata at Aye, Oromia Special Force, and also in Mota, that was religious conflict. By the way, I would come back to it later. At every region, with those ethnic groups within the country, and also with regional states, and sometimes even with other countries, attempts have been made to create conflicts. Same in Amara. Many have died. For instance, in Kamant, when you look at it, as you might all know, in Amara region, around Gondar, there is this tradition of intermarriage, living together with ethnic groups. There are a lot of Eritreans, Tigrayans, Oromos, Kamans. Many people have intermarried. That's the city and the region, the area rather. Kamant and Amara, it's hardly difficult, possible to differentiate them. And at Amara leadership, quite a number of them, their wives are Kamants. The children are half Kamant and half Amara. It's one family, one language, one culture, one tradition. They don't have any problem, but this conflict has been sponsored so that there will not be peace in Amhara. There will be ethnic conflicts within the region, and many have died and suffered destruction. In Benishangul, there were 15 conflicts. Matakal, around Asosa, both from Amara and Oromia, there was lots of displacements. Dangu, as you all hear, the farmer, he goes to his land and is killed. It's become a common news. In Addis Ababa, there were 14 conflicts. What surprises me from among the conflicts is the killing of artist Achalu Hundessa. The assassination of Achalu Hundessa. There were among 10 people assigned already for assassinations from Prosperity Party, and renowned people were already marked for assassinations, first from Oria region and then from Amhara regions, killing authorities to make it look like there is a conflict between Amara and Oromo. A lot of work had gone into that. We've lost Achalu, and we were able to avert further assassinations. What surprises me about Achalu is a couple of years ago there was an issue. Why did Achalu Hundensa had a viewing on Oromo TV? We faced a lot of criticisms from them. They themselves now were the first ones to announce the Oromo liberation fighter Achalu was assassinated. You know what transpired after that. In Gambela, there were 7 conflicts
ስደተኞች ካምፕ ጭምር
and the camps also, refugee camps, there was conflicts. And in the north, as you know, the case of Gedio, Guraverda, Konso,
ሚዛን ቴፒ ላይ
Mizantepi, in other parts also,
በተለየ ጌዲዮ
especially in Gedio,
በጣም የሚገርመው በጌዲዮና በጉጂ
between
መካከል
Gideon Guji,
በሁሉም መመዘኛ
and
አንድ ቤተሰብ የሚባል ህዝብ ነው።
at every measurement you can say it's one family, but they created conflict, hatred, animosity.
ደቡብ ላይ
In southern
ሰዎች
part, a
ተጎድተዋል።
lot of people have
ህዝቤ
been
ወገኔ ብሎ
damaged.
ሌሎች ብሔሮች እንዲሁ ተጎድተዋል።
Other ethnic people that came to their own
Jijjiga ላይ
people have been killed. In Jijiga,
ላይ
in Afar,
ከኢሳ ጋር ተያይዞ
in connection with Essa,
ሶስት ግጭት ነበር። አፋር
was
ላይ
3
ድሬዳዋ ሶስት
conflicts. In
ነበር።
Dredwa, there
ሀረሪ
was
ሁለት
3. In
ነበር።
Harare, there was
ሲዳማ
2.
ላይ
In
ሁለት
Sidama,
ነበር።
we had 2.
ቅድም ያነሳሁት
I've mentioned it earlier.
ይሄ ሁሉ ሲሆን
All these
በዚህ
being
መልክ
done,
ትግራይ ላይ አንድም ግጭት
there was
አልነበረም።
not even a single incident in Tigray.
በሽራሮ
In Shiraro,
ሽራሮ የሚገኙ ኩነማዎችና
the
ትግራዮች
Kunamas and the Tigrays never fight.
በሐዋሳ ግን ወላይታና
But in
ሲዳማ
Awasa, Walaita and Sidamans fight.
ኢሮብ አካባቢ
In
ያሉ
Europe,
የኢሮብ ህዝቦች
there are
ትግራይ ላይ
Europes, they
አይጋጩም።
don't fight with Tigrayans.
መቀየም የለባቸውም።
They should not do that.
ሌላ ቦታ ግን
But in other parts of the country,
በእያንዳንዱ ክልል
in
ብቻ
various
ሳይሆን
regions, not only
ክልል
that,
በክልል
but region against region,
ለምሳሌ
or
አማራ
regional state against regional state. For instance, in
ቤንሻንጉል
Amhara,
ያዋስነዋል፣
his neighbors with
ኦሮሚያ
Benshangul, there was
ያዋስነዋል፣
clashes. There was with Oromia, there was clash.
ያዋስነዋል፣
With Afar, there was clashes.
ትግራይ
In
ያዋስነዋል፣
Tigray,
አልተጋጨም።
there was no conflict there.
አፋር
Afar,
ኦሮሚያ ያዋስነዋል፣
borders with
ተጋጭቷል።
Oromia, there were conflicts.
Somalia
Borders with
ያዋስነዋል፣
Somalia,
ተጋጭቷል።
there were
አማራ
conflicts with
ያዋስነዋል፣
Amara also. There were
ትግራይ
conflicts.
ያዋስነዋል፣ አልተጋጨም።
But there was a border with
ልክ
Tigray,
ነው።
but there was no conflict.
አፋር ላይ ገጠመን
The incident in Afar
ትንሽ ለመረጃ ስለሚጠቅም እሱን ላንሳላችሁ።
would be worth noting here.
አፋርና ሶማሌ መሀል ግጭት ይፈጠራል።
There was a conflict between Afar and Somali.
ሲፈጠር የሁለቱም ክልል አመራሮች
So the regions of the leaders of the two regions,
ግምገማ ስንቀመጥ
we called them.
የአፋር ፕሬዝዳንት
So the president of Afar, Honorable Ato Abwan, he said something of
አፋርና
great. He said,
ሶማሌ ድሮም ይጣላል።
with Afar and Somali, we had conflicts all along.
አዲስ
It's
አይደለም።
not something new.
የአሁኑ የአፋርና የሶማሌ
But
ነው
the-
ብላችሁ ታስባላችሁ
But the
ወይ?
current one, do
Conflict
you
is
think
reality.
the conflict is
They below-
actually between Afar and
አንደኛ በዚህ
Somali?
ሴት
When I asked to
ይሞታል።
elaborate, they
ሶማሌ
said
ሴት አይገልም፣
in this
አፋር
conflict
ሴት
women
አይገልም።
are dying. Afars and
ንቀት
Somalis
ለምን
never
ሴት
kill
አንገላል?
women.
አዲስ ባህል ነው አለ።
This is something new, he said.
ሁለተኛ
And secondly, he
አፋርና
said,
ሶማሌ ቀን
Afar
ቀን
and
ይጋጫሉ፣
Somali, they
ማታ
fight during
ማታ
the night,
ይዋጋሉ፣ ማታ
never
ውጊያ
fight
ያደርጋሉ።
during nights. They
የአሁኑ
do it
የማታ
only
ውጊያ
night. But
ያለው
this
አለ።
is involves fights during the nights also.
ሶስተኛ
And thirdly,
አፋርና ሶማሌ
Afar and Somali,
በግልጽ እየተናገረ እየሄደ ይዋጋል እንጂ
they
አፉን ሸፍኖ በመሸፈኛ
blatantly
በራሱ
they
አይዋጋም።
speak
የአሁኑ
and
እኮ
fight
ፊታቸው የተደበቀ ነው አለ።
with no coverings and with no masks. But now
ሲል
the situation is different.
መከላከያን
So the defense forces,
ኃይልህን አውጣ፣ የሶማሌን ክልል ኃይልህን አውጣ፣ የአፋርን ክልል
we
ኃይልህን
gave
አውጣ።
instructions
ፌዴራል ፖሊስም
that federal police and the federal army should
ስፔሻል
remove,
ፎርስ ነው ከዚህ የሚሄደው።
and then we decided to send in a federal special force
መከላከያን
Republican.
ካየህ ምታ፣
We gave
ፖሊስን
them
ካየህ ምታ፣
commands
የአፋር ሶማሌ
to
ክልል
shoot
ካየህ ምታ፣
at
አንድ ሰው
any
እንዳይጠቃ
other force around.
ሁላችሁም ውጡ ብለን
So we
Special force
gave
ላከ።
commands for all other forces
እንኳን
to
ግጭት
leave.
እንኳን ግድያ
After that,
ድምፅ የለም፣
it was quiet, total quiet,
ድምፅ የለም።
not a
ከሁሉ
not
ጋር መከላከያን
noise.
አውጥተን
We cannot remove the defense forces from everywhere
መከላከያ ባለበት አካባቢ ቅድም ባልኳችሁ መንገድ
where there's a
የሚፈጠረው
presence
ግጭት
of
ደግሞ በከፍተኛ ደረጃ
defense
ጠባሳ
forces.
በዚህ ውስጥ በጣም የሚያሳዝነው
And here, something that's very sad,
ሱዳን ጋር የገጠመው ሁኔታ ነው።
our situation
የሱዳን
with
ህዝብ
Sudan,
ተደጋጋሚ እንዳልኩት
as
በዚህ
I
ሀገር
repeatedly said,
ትልቅ ውለታ የዋለ ህዝብ ነው። አሁንም በዚህ ሁኔታ ውስጥ
the
ከፍተኛ
Sudanese
ድጋፍ
people
ያደረገ በኋላ መጣ።
have done a lot of good.
ነገር ግን ለሱዳንም የተወሰኑ ሰዎች ሄደው
So
መከላከያ ማለት እኮ እኛ
some
ነን፣
people went to Sudan.
እኛ እንወጋህን፣ አሁን ነው ጊዜው መሬት
They
የምትወስድበት፣
said,
መግባት
now
ትችላለህ ብሎ
the door is
የቆሰቆሱት
open
እኛ ነው።
and you can fight. People said
የሱዳን
that from
መንግስት
here,
ግን እኔ
but
በኃይል
the government
ሳይሆን
of
በህጋዊ
Sudan
መንገድ
said, I will not
ይገባኛል
use
የምለውን ነገር
force,
ብሎ መረጃውን ሰጥቶታል።
but I would go the legal way.
እዚህ የሚያጋጩን አለበቃ ሲል እዛም ተወጣ። ሶማሌ ክልል ብትሄዱ ሲሚላርሊ ይሄኛው መንግስት ሞቃዲሾ ይደግፋል እንትና አይደግፍም እያሉ ሶማሌዎች
supports
ከእኛ ጋር
Mogadishu, and so they were trying to make us
ሳውት ሱዳን ብትሄዱ
get in
ተመሳሳይ
fight with Somalia as well. The same happened
በሀገር
in
ውስጥ
South
ያበቃ
Sudan also. it didn't end within the country.
ከዛ በኋላ
Following that,
ቤተ
the army of
መንግስት
the
አጥተው
commando
የመጡበትን ታስታውሳላችሁ።
were armed and came to the palace. You remember that time? Around 200 forces.
ከመጣበት ቤተ መንግስት እስከወረረበት ጊዜ ድረስ
From the
ምንም
time they
መረጃ
came
አልነበረም።
to the time they surrounded the palace, we'd never had
በተደበቀ
information.
ሙከራ ማድረግ
So
ክልልና ክልል
causing
ማጋጨት
disputes between
በቂ
people
ስላልነበረ እዚሁ መጡ።
was not enough, so they had to come here.
ግቢ ድረስ መጡ።
They came to the compound.
እሱም ከሸፈ።
That also was
ህገወጥ
futile.
የመሳሪያ ዝውውር፣ ህገወጥ የገንዘብ ዝውውር፣
Illegal movement of arms and money took
ይህ
place
ማስፈራራት
widespread. And there's
ከህዝብ ከብሔር
orchestrations
ብልጽግና ውስጥ ገባ።
get out of religion, people, and ethnicity and entered into prosperity.
በህይወታቸው ተወራርደው ያመጡ ግለሰቦች ሳይቀሩ
And the people
አይ በቃ እነዚህ
who
ሰዎች አንችላቸውም፣
gave their life for the reform also said, let's get into an agreement with these people because we can't handle them. They said this reform will not be success, and said let's agree with them. But I said we can't agree with the devil
ካልሰራ በስተቀር
unless you identify them.
ውስጣችን ያለ ኃይልን
The power within us
ተፍረከረከ።
was dismantled.
አሁንም ብዙ ሀሳብ ውስጥ ገባ። ህዝቡ
The opposition got in a different opinion. The people attitude changed. Many fingers were pointed towards us, and they started saying the previous government is good. You need a strong government.
ብለው ቅስቀሳ ጀመሩ በግልጽ።
They started campaigning that.
የትግራይ ህዝብ ደግሞ
The people of Tigray was made not to
መከበር ስሜት አማራ ሊወጋ ነው፣
get
ኤርትራ
closer
ሊወጋ ነው፣
with
ትግራይ ሊወጋ
its
ነው፣
neighbors. So they were saying the federal government, the Amara, and so on are going to
ሊወረር ነው እያለ የሚያስብ አድርገው
kill you.
በከፍተኛ ደረጃ ሰሩበት።
They were playing with their minds.
ጠቅላላ የኢትዮጵያ ህዝብ
The
በዚህ ተገማች
general Ethiopian people
እንዲቆይ ያደረጉት ወጥቶ መግባት
were suspicious. They were never trusted coming back home.
ለሀገር እንዲሆን
They were filled with fear.
በለውጥ
The government
በየሳምንት በሚፈጠሩ አጀንዳዎች እንዲወጠር እንዲያዝ አደረጉ።
was surrounded with agendas
ለውጡ ምንም
aimed at reversing the reform.
ሰፊ ስራ ሰሩ።
They
ይሄ ሲሰራ
created multifaceted
በተለይ
activities.
እንደምታውቁት የ-
As I have said earlier, the security service reform, especially the army, was very important. If we change that,
ይቀጥላል።
of course, the conflicts here and there will continue.
አልመጣንም፣ ባለው ነው የገባነው እና ችግር ስለሆነ ሪፎርም ያስፈልጋል ብለን
And we said the reform is important to change this for once and for all. So three-level change took place: higher level, middle level, and lower level. The higher level administration,
እስከ ሻለቃ
starting from the general to a commander to a captain, around 55% was reduced to 26%. Before this
ከፍተኛ አመራሮች
conflict, 26% of higher officials were from Tigray. The number was enormous, but
ማግኘት አለባቸው።
there needed to be, or we had a feeling that equal share should exist within the army. We said, let's reform it.
ትግራይ የሚባል
We were not saying we don't need Tigray in the army.
ያን 26 ካደረግን በኋላ
After making that 26%,
የነበረውን 25 አደረግን። በተለይ
we reduced from the total to 25. What the people should understand is that until the time of the reform,
የመጨረሻው ጣራ ሜጀር ጀነራል
Major General was the highest rank for Southern people representatives.
ደቡብ አጠቃላይ 50 ምናምን ብሔር
Around 50% of the South got Lieutenant General, around 50% after the reform. Why?
25 ከደቡብ
Because
25
25 from South, from Oromo, and from Amara.
የሚያጋጥመን ነገር ካለ ሰው
If
በብቃት
something happens, we would open the room for all to be capable. So we made a room for that
ብቃት ያላቸው ሰዎች ስላሉ ማለት ነው።
because we think there are people capable.
እንዳላቸው አሁን
It wasn't an issue of capacity. They have proved that during this time also. The mechanized division also
አሁን
required
50% ትግራይ ነው። ከ50 በላይ መሄድ
professionalism. So we have 50% Tigray right now from 100.
መቀየር የሚቻል ስላልነበረ
It wasn't easy to simply change it.
እግረኛ ክፍለ ጦር
the troops subdivision from 80 to 40%, mechanized division from 80 to 44, the troops to 40%. We've managed to make it around 50%, staffs to 25%, and also training to 25%. This was the higher level readjustment. Amara, Tigray, South were also incorporated. Those people who were removed and also at a higher level, at a higher rank, were never retired before their time reached. Previously, about Adasa and Baja Dabale were Lieutenant General at the time, so they were removed previously. But we didn't make the same mistake. We retired only people who reached the age of retirement and said we have to stand firm to that position. The second readjustment was the middle level administration. The captains there was a lot of problem at the rank of captain. The general is a political assignment. A colonel can be a general in 6 months, in a year sometimes. But a captain, unless he makes extra activities, he will not become a general. If we remove them, of course it will be a problem for the country, because the country got into these problems because of the reforms we did in the army. When we make these reforms, the forces that come out of here have their own buildings in the city, and after retirement they started assembling their own army. So if we remove the middle administration, definitely they will go there and build their own army and make us vacant. So we said it will make us weak and make the other party strong. Since it's a carrier, if they leave here, they will go somewhere. So it needs years. The third is the lower level administration. In the past 1.5 years, 2 years, the trainings given by the government and discussions never took place in the army. The change in the strategy, making it the army of Ethiopia and to be governed by the constitution and by the people of Ethiopia, to not be the army of prosperity. If it becomes the army of the prosperity, it will be definitely a problem. They had questions of salary, uniform. We tried to fulfill those and prepare the lower level. It was impossible to complete it in 2 years. It needed time because it requires time. We were unable to leapfrog. The second problem is any discussions we're having within the council or anywhere would reach the junta, and the junta would start its own discussion. The authority was not as it was before. We couldn't assemble and discuss at night and decide in the morning, so it was fruitless. And therefore, if the livelihood of Ethiopia and its people is at stake, after dividing the 3 administrations within the army, we had secret divisions also. The first one was the Republican Guard. The Republican Guard, as it stands today, completed its mission. We don't need it anymore. It can be member of the army. We decided to have a special force to do a surgery, to do operations. So we trained highly qualified special forces. That was what we tried to do. If there comes a problem, they will be there to solve it. And two, it was the Air Force. We had to revitalize the Air Force. It required technology, and especially we needed drones and UAVs, and we did multifaceted activities in that regard. We didn't allow them to see the types and models. It was a secret reform. When the special force were showing activities, they were looking at them, but they don't know their capabilities. They know few information, but they don't understand the entire operation. Few days before the war, some people visited the army. Some of you asked, why are they showing us the army? We wanted to show them that the Air Force is as you know it. We didn't want them to know what we prepared for them. So when they saw the Air Force and the army, they said, there is no preparation, so we're okay. Regarding the drone, we heard several news. You can go and see it for yourself. We planned it for years. It's a capacity build for years. But regarding the drone, the junta power, it was not hidden from them. I didn't hide it from them. We will get into a modern fight. And I told them, we have this equipment, so don't get into a fight. But they did not believe me, because it was impossible for them to see it within their network. So they didn't accept it. But this power, this force, left Mekelle and assembling around Agara Salam. What I want them to hear is that last night, around midnight, we've heard several problems in Abiy Ahmed and Agara Salam. We have seen their activities live. We didn't attack them at night because on retreat they took their children and their wives with them. They took members of our troop as well. There were several disturbances within the people. We saw it, we didn't attack, and we came back. But this will not continue. The second one is related to civilians. What really surprises me is that the Air Force and the Special Force in general, the Ministry of Defense, the Honorable House. One thing I want you to understand is that when a MiG goes to the other side, it will be the responsibility of the captain to control the navigation and for the execution. It wasn't like that. It's not like that with the drone. The drone, every direction, every target is inputted, and every target is signed and approved. The Honorable House can see that. Every missile launched is backed by a signature of an authority. 99% hit their target. 99% did not have collateral. When it was suspicious, we don't fire, especially at night, because we don't want to kill children. They're ours. Between the Special Force and the Air Force, the capacity created was unassumed by the enemy. They assumed drone for firing, but we're using drones to surveil, to monitor their activities. We're watching them day and night. In relation to civilian damage, we made sure extra caution is taken. Under no circumstances in 3 weeks in Humara, Ndansha, Shirare, Adagara, Adwalala, Adnabid, Adalom, Shire, Sadatnaka, Aksum, Adwa, Adigrat, Zalambasa, Makale. Not even a single person was killed in these cities. No country's army can show such a performance. Our army is disciplined and victorious. I said, you will destroy Makale and so on. Makale is ours. It was built with our own resources. We're not going to destroy it. Not even a single person was affected, damaged by the operation in Makale. But there are questions raised. Why are you using special force? Why are you using air force? Why were you not working on the mechanized forces? People definitely ask. It's easy to ask, but doing it is difficult. We couldn't use mechanized forces because it requires money. Do you know how expensive a tank is? We cannot invest that much resource at this time. However, the missile the junta is using, the one it stole from the army, the rockets, we have double, triple that amount, that capacity. But they don't know we have the same capacity because it has to do with intelligence. We didn't launch a single rocket to Tigray. Why are we sending rockets to? It's something that travels in kilometers and falls somewhere. We don't even know who it's going to affect. Our pilots, if they see civilians in the area, they come back without attacking. We decide after surveilling using our drones. But rockets are very dangerous. Even though we have better capacity, we won't use it. We're not the junta. We have responsibilities. We conduct ourselves responsibly. So the problem with mechanized was money. The second problem is, and also what I want the people to understand in the house to also take into account, is that most of us fight on Facebook. In the past year and a half, we wanted to open the army, let alone the other regions from Amara and Oromo, from these two big regions. It was difficult to even get 1,000 people. No one wants to be part of the army, but will question whether we are protecting the country or not. This only serves a purpose for Facebook. There was no need to be recruited. There was no desire to be part. If a youth becomes part of the army, it will make him a full person. In many countries, people serve before they join the labor force. When you recruit someone to the army, out of 100 million people, it was difficult to find 5,000 people. The people of Ethiopia should think about this. It's very dangerous. Member of the army means a person who says, I'll serve my country even if you deny him food for 5 days. An army means a person who doesn't have a house to run his family, who gives his life for his country. The preparedness of the people, the Ethiopian people, was very, very low in terms of that. You need to take this into consideration. We can only succeed if you agree to participate. That's the only way we can protect our country. The other one is the diaspora. The diaspora, as you know, they love their country. When something happens, they'll be pissed. They go out on campaigns. But the diaspora were also supporting the junta in finance. Several times we said this power or this force was getting more foreign currency more than the government.
ወንድሙ ይገደልበትን የጥፋት መሳሪያ ያስታጥቃል።
They were giving weapons with which their brothers were killed.
አቃለው በህገወጥ መንገድ ገንዘብ ሲመጣ ትርፍ ይኖረዋል።
We know that when money comes into the country in an illegal means, there are benefits, there are profits, but it might kill your brother, your own brother. We can make it legal and we can find ways of adjusting,
ንጹሃን ዜጎችን የሚጎዳ
but it should not be used for the enemies, for illegal groups, so it kills our citizen. So we have to watch ourselves in that regard. Notwithstanding this, the SSR reform, the security service reform, however developed it is, unless we do reform in other sectors, we will not have a comprehensive peace in the country. The first one is political reform. Setting aside the army and the politics, if EPRDF fails, there was a notion, a negative notion that Ethiopia will be dismantled. A country that was formed a year ago cannot be trusted to carry the country, all in all. That was the assumption within the party. There is no country if we don't exist. In relation to that, when we enter into a party reform, when people say TPLF left when prosperity was created, that's wrong. When we went to Awasa, TPLF Central Committee have had a discussion and said we'll not go to Awasa and take part in the discussion. We knew there was that cult. We have had the information. Some of them that made it to the meeting said, we'll get information, we'll cause disturbance within them, and said it's better to dismantle them than not to go. So they joined us in Awasa. The PRDF council in Awasa was full of debates. Some of them were saying, let's accept Algiers agreement, let's give the land to Eritrea. And the decision was made unanimously, including their members. The head of the intelligence also was voting for that. It was also deliberated here in the House, but after making the decision, he made sure it's not executed. There were three fronts. The first front, when we started the meeting, there were groups that were insulting, making it more of a debate. They were assigned for that strategic purpose. And the second ones were that opposed them and acted like they were supporting. And the third group were trying to mediate. This was designed, they deliberated on it, and they assigned people for that activity also. That party that was raising hand and supporting us would leave the room and then say something different on the media. And the people insulting within the discussion, you'll not see them outside in public. This is an old strategy. They were using this in the past as well. We knew about it, so it didn't affect us as much. But the assemblies, the discussions were made, were affected by these activities. They were trying to disclose the discussions of the party, opposing activities, hiding criminals. When we said let's have institutional capacity for Ethiopia, they were saying how is Afar and Somali having equal voices the same as ours. They were raising this type of ideas. The politics of Ethiopia in terms of the ruling party, their loss for them was the establishment of prosperity. It was a victory. Perhaps they said prosperity is unitary and so on. It's not a unitary government. Prosperity stands for federalism. Prosperity believes that all nations and nationalities are respected for their language and ethnicity. It doesn't discriminate between groups. It doesn't discriminate against languages. This is not what we fought for. This is why we want to create institutions whereby all people take part. These forces said, how is a terrorist group coming into the country? They kept saying that for a while, but later they created a federalist group with a terrorist. When we said, let's have them come to the country, they debated. But later they became friends and tried to create a federalist group. This reform in the party and the activities of the PLF junta came from Kuomintang, when the China Liberation Party, when they were bringing freedom to the country, they created Taiwan. They've had economy, power. Kuomintang had one advantage. Taiwan had a cost. All members, including the parliament, went there. And I told them, secession is not good for you. It will not benefit you. You can only benefit when you align with Ethiopia. Don't even think about it. The experiences of ABC were disastrous. And I said, like Kuomintang, the old ideology, and they tried to operate in a political way, taking that into consideration. The economy was slowed down. There was microeconomic imbalance, unemployment. Our projects, the small or large ones, they were halted because of corruption. We were having difficulty paying salaries and loans outside of the problems I mentioned to you earlier. Without having these reforms, whatever we do for the army, it will be disintegrated. So the economy required a reform. So there were a lot of reforms in the economy. And the major problem we faced later on was changing our currency. When the time comes for that, the reform was coming to success, and the world was looking at Ethiopia in terms of the success in the economy. They were seeing that we're able to execute. I will not divulge into it for the sake of time, but government enterprises, the bank sectors, like the army, were surrounded for destruction, to extract resources. The format in the army and the intelligence existed in the telecom, in ELPA, sugar, and so on. I will not divulge into those, but the economic reform was very critical. The third critical area that needed reform was legal reform. Regarding the law, there were suppressing laws in the country that narrowed the political platform that we opposed. We divided this into three. The first one was suppressing laws that narrowed the political reform, needed revisions. The CSO organizations proclamation needed to be loosened. Perhaps several NGOs were undertaking other activities outside of their mainstream job. We will solve those as we go, but it was one of the proclamations that needed to be changed. The second one is Electoral Board Revision Proclamation. It needed to stand out as an independent democratic institution, trusted and organized, so that it can perform its activities aligned with the constitution, but it was also suppressed by a proclamation, and we undertook the activities, you know. The third one is electoral law. The parties' rules and so on, and how we operate, the procedures. So there was a legal reform in that as well. The other one is Human Rights Commission. As you know, our cadres controlled it. After the reform, we strengthened the institution.
Increased, but comparatively, it's a liberal, free institution. The other one, submersive role, is the anti-terrorist law. Was very destructive, and we came up with the improvement. The worst one is that of prison administration law. After a person is indicted, there were all sorts of beatings, dark rooms, unknown prison places who were against human rights, and that punishment cannot involve depriving food, depriving TV, that their human rights would be supported, and budget has been allotted to that, and also the media law that you know. Prior to the change, the website and blockers, more than 280 were blocked. The conventional media were being jumped. If that was not the case, dishes would be put in place, undestroyed dishes, but we changed that. Abuses, we can come up with improvements along the way, but we took care of this suppressive laws. And the cabinet was engaged in work from Monday to Friday. Meetings were held on Saturdays. This is something new. We wanted to take more time to work because there was a lot of accumulated things to take care of. Apart from these suppressive laws, there are other laws also, the trade law, mediation laws. We have assigned the UN law, so we wanted to come up with a law that incorporated mediation, and this would be of great use in the economic arena also, and also to make Ethiopia conducive for international trade. They had their own positive contributions therein. And thirdly, great documents that stay there for 60 years, laws that were in place for 60 years, that came from the time of the king. Reform works has been done, criminal law, penal law procedure. It was there for 60 years. It's a big document. It has not been touched upon for 60 years, but that work has been done. The trade law, procedural laws, all sorts of laws have been gone through reforms, and also we had political reforms, economic reforms, and also law enforcement also underwent reforms. And the fifth critical area is diplomacy. When we come to diplomacy, we had two problems. One is Ethiopia as a country without a port. Secondly, the geopolitics. There are forces that want to weaken Ethiopia. They are still active, and they were there in history. If we don't work in close contact with our neighbors, and that was proved if we had not made peace with Eritrea, you know what could have happened these days. Our reconciliation is a matter of individuals, but that of people.
የኤርትራ ህዝብ
more than Eritrea government, the Eritrea people has demonstrated this clearly. I would come back to this later when we go to Somali.
እኛ እኮ እናንተን አናምናችሁም በክልል ከፋፍላችሁ
They said we don't trust you because it's you who create division. It's your government that's creating havoc. We hate you, they said.
የሚል ሳይደብቁ ነገሩ
They say this blatantly, openly. When we go to South Sudan,
የምንባላበት ነገር በሙሉ የእናንተ ውጤት
they said it's you who created division and conflict in our eyes. They said you gave Suyu Musfin and created havoc and division between the two of us. It's you.
ጎረቤት በሙሉ እናንተ እኮ ብሎ የሚጠላት ሀገር ነበር
As everybody hates Ethiopia as a neighbor. The parliament needs to know this. So this internal division has also gone abroad, be it ethnic and otherwise.
ከፍተኛ ጥላቻ ነበራቸው
So they harbored hatred against us, and to change these and to come up with a positive relationship with our neighbors' countries.
ክብር
And then we should give priority to the dignity of citizens. That's the way we went about it. The first issue was that of Eritrea. We decided together the decision was not from prosperity. It's the junta that decided this. They said, let's recognize the Algiers agreement. But to stop the reconciliation, there is nothing that they have not attempted. The decision was there, common decision. Sometimes they say it's individuals coming together and this and that, but now the junta has dehumanized the Ethiopian forces, sent them without clothes. The Eritrean people gave them clothes, they gave them food. The Ethiopian people must know and must honor this. The Eritrea people is not just a brother people, but a friend in difficult situation. When the operation was being carried on, the people we met in prisons, they are very in a bad situations. But those that fled Ethiopia to Eritrea, they get strong and came back to fight for their country. Those that denied it food and water are our own people. Those that were sent without any clothes, they were sent to Eritrea. That's why they came with Eritrean attire. So in this operation, for the people of Eritrea, for the government and people of Eritrea, for the people and government of Djibouti and Somalia and Kenya people and government, South Sudan people and government, I extend great appreciation and thanksgiving. Everybody helped us. Sudan, as usual, stood with us, gave us great support. Eritrea, Djibouti, Kenya, Sudan, the same. Our neighbor countries, we needed them. Would continue to work together in a spirit of brotherhood. We need them. In connection with this, the Northern Division attack, now that we know the background that I just relayed, this junta, they insulted us, we didn't respond. They conspired all sorts of economic and other conspirations, we kept quiet. They created havoc here and there, we kept quiet. They conducted illegal elections, they expected war, we didn't do anything. All sorts of political incitements, we kept our cool. Then we went to attack. But before we go there, the Northern Division and all other divisions combined together would not amount the Northern Division, be it military capacity wise, armament wise. The military depot is in Tigray. We don't even have a single bullet here. The rockets, missiles, all of it are in Tigray region. The missile operators are from one region. To bring that rocket, there was a lot of attempts done. We gathered them and we tried to negotiate with them. We should remove the rockets, but they would tell the junta, and the next day they would close the door with women and children. they said the armament is not going to move there. They said with the pretext that Eritreans would fight against us, but they were getting ready for another war. So we had to do whatever we could, but we could not remove the rockets. We asked for the keys, the starters. They brought us the key. But they're still using the rockets. By the way, our defense force, the armaments, the mechanized, for years was purposely made to gather in that region. They wanted to collect forces in that particular place. This is an open knowledge. The tanks are there, all sorts of armaments are there. Even the Ethiopian depot or oil depot is there. So when we talk of mobility, the army could not do anything. We cannot replace that by new purchases for the lack of money. So with the Special Force, Air Force and rockets, there was a lot of work done. You accuse us not acting in time, but we needed even more time because to come up with commanders, we cannot just assign. It's a career that requires time to develop. Having done that, keeping all our armaments, what led us to make preparation is when we had a conflict in other part, not thinking that there would be traitors to such an extent. We asked that some of the army and the armaments should come to help. They said no, the army is not going and the armament is not going. They're actually sending forces against us, encouraging other forces to come and fight us. This is what they have been doing, and then on that particular night at 11 p.m. this junta disrupted communication from Addis Ababa. They stopped power, electric power and telephone communication. So they gathered in 50, 60, so that they would not communicate with one another. They gathered, they rounded up with the militia, and they sent elders for those who refused to cooperate. Very disgraceful acts of terrorism and violence. And then they killed many, they took many captive. Those who were killed, they were tied with ropes and they were totally naked, the bodies. By the way, a dead body has no race. It's when life is there that we talk of ethnicity. A dead body does not have any language, just a body. But to think that a dead body is an Oromo and a Tigray, it's inhuman. Okay, kill them, but not burying them, it's shameful. Let alone an army that fought for you and did a lot of good on your behalf. So arrogance, pride is bad. It brings about destruction, and it has a blinding force. If we have this power and this armaments, that's the way that's the reason that led them to act like this. Before this, they have openly said, if you don't do what we tell you to do, would create havoc, not only in Ethiopia, in East Africa. This is not in, they don't say this in secret. They speak this to diplomats, and the diplomats get afraid. They said if you touch them, they would disrupt the peace of the area. What is very sad about this is an old ape wants to jump like a young one, and it gets into trouble. These people have no knowledge of military science at all whatsoever. They just have old mentality, be it economic or military. Let me give you two examples for this.
በአሜሪካን ሲቪል
In the
ዋር
American Civil War,
የአሜሪካን ሲቪል ዋር የፈጠረው ዋናው ጉዳይ
the thing that American Civil War created was in the southern part of the US, and the north there was a conflict
የባሪያ ስርዓት ይቅር አይቅር
around slavery.
አብርሃም
Abraham
ሊንከን
Lincoln
ሲመጣ የባሪያ ስርዓት አቆማለሁ
wanted to demolish slavery,
ደቡብ አካባቢ ያሉ
and those in the south with huge plantations, they wanted to continue with the system.
ጀነራል ጀፈርሰን ዴቪስ
So
የሚባል
General
በአሜሪካን
Jefferson
Academy
Davis, who was a graduate of War Academy in the US,
ራሱን ቺፍ ኦፍ ስታፍ አድርጎ
he became a chief of staff in the south, and then they said we have seceded, and they said they don't respect Abraham Lincoln. That was the campaign. Abraham Lincoln, just like us, he begged for years and took the situation in a lot of patience. But one night, just like what happened in Ethiopia, in South Carolina, a mechanized army,
በሌሊት ገብቶ
they attacked it during the night. That was led by General Davis.
ደበደባቸው መሳሪያ ቀማ
They stole armaments also.
አብርሃም ሊንከን አልተዘጋጀም
Abraham Lincoln was not prepared for this.
ወታደር ነኝ ውትድርናን ከኔ በላይ የሚያውቅ
That man said, I am an army qualified general and nobody can fight the way I do. Abraham Lincoln gathered up militias.
እነዚህ የደቡብ ግዛቶች
The first thing he
ወደ
did
ውጭ
was
የሚሄዱበትን ቦርደር
he closed the border of the southern border, that the southerners would not be able to leave their country.
እንደ ጀፈርሰን ዴቪስ ሰሜን እዝን ሲያጠቁ እኛ ደግሞ ቶሎ ብለን ቦርደር
When they attacked the northern division, the first thing we did was we closed the border.
ሁለተኛው
Second thing was, just like the American Civil War,
እናንተን የገጠማችሁ ፈተና ነው የገጠማችሁ
we want to tell the Americans that the same struggle that you faced happened in Ethiopia. It took you 3.5 years to reunify the two parts of the US because you deemed it unconstitutional. So the same thing happened. The constitution was attacked. It didn't take us 3 years, but only 3 weeks.
በዚህ ብትረዱ
If you understand that this way, it would be good.
አሜሪካ ጋር
The
የሚያያዘው
second relationship with what happened in the US was in the Second World War.
ፐርል ሃርበር የሚባል ቦታ ላይ ጃፓን
The Japanese
በአሜሪካ ጦር ላይ
attacked the American army at the Pearl Harbor unexpectedly, just like what happened in Tigray.
የባህር ኃይሉ ያኔ አሜሪካ ፓርላማ
American
ራሱ
Parliament
ወስኖ
decided to defend itself.
ጃፓን ላይ ጦር መሳሪያ ብቻ ሳይሆን የኒውክሌር ቦምብ
It
ተጠቅሞ
used even a nuclear bomb
ጃፓን እንዳልነበረች
against Japan and totally destroyed Japan.
በነገራችን ላይ
As
በአሜሪካ
you
ሲቪል
know, in
ዋር
the American Civil War,
የጀነራል ጀፈርሰን ዴቪስ እምቢት ትዕቢት
the arrogance of General
ከጦርነቱ
Jefferson,
በኋላ 20 ዓመት
even 20 years after the
የሳውት
war,
አሜሪካ ፓርት
the southern
ራሱን መልሶ መገንባት አልቻለም።
part of the US took more than 20 years to rebuild its community.
የጃፓን
The keys of Japan in the Second World War,
ያንን ጦርነት የመራው
the leader of the war,
ማካርቱር
General
ይባላል።
MacArthur,
ሶስት ጀነራል የአሜሪካ ጀነራል
Four-star MacArthur,
አሸንፎ ሲወጣ
after defeating and winning the battle in
ሻል
Tokyo,
ያለው መንደር የአሜሪካ ጦር ሰፈር ብቻ
the
ነው።
only part that was remaining standing is the American camp military. Apart from that,
መሰረተ ልማት
all
የማይታይባት የወደመች ከተማ ነው።
infrastructure was totally demolished.
በዛ
But not only that,
እስካሁን ድረስ
up until
በዚያ
today,
ውጊያ ሳቢያ
because of
በጉዳዩ ምንም ነገር እውቀት
what
የሌላቸው
happened
ጄኔሬሽን
then, the generations after generations are suffering
ምን አይነት በሽታ ሀቅ
all sorts of
እንደነበረ
sicknesses. It's open knowledge.
ይሄን ታሪክ ያፈጀ ያረጀ እሳቤ ይዞ
So this age-old
ይህ
mentality
ስግብግብ ጁንታ
is
የሰሜን
what this junta
ኮማንድ ላይ
had in mind
ጦርነት
when it
ያወጀ
attacked
ማወጅ
the
አይደለም።
northern division.
አንድ የኛ ሰው አለ እዛ
This
በእኛ ሰው
certain
አማካኝነት
individual
ተነግሮ
told us
መብረቃዊ
the
ጥቃት
story.
ተፈጽሞ
He said it was an attack, swift attack like lightning. They openly declared that.
መሪዎች እየወጡ
The,
ሰሜን
the,
ከእኛ
the,
ጋር ነው
the
የሚዋጋው
leaders
ይላሉ።
of the region said the northern force is with us, but the northern force is for 20 years. They fought with the Eritreans. Not only that, but for 20 years, it protected the region against further attack.
ከእነሱ ጋር ከሆነ
If the northern
ምንም ማሰብ አያስፈልግም።
division is with
ድሮ
them,
የተከላከለ ነው፣ ጩኸት አያስፈልግም።
then it's a lost
እሱን
case.
ይዞ መከላከል ትጥቁ ያለው እዛ ሰው
The
ያለው እዛ።
force is there, the people is there.
በአንድ ሚዲያ ከእኛ ጋር
In one media they
ተዋግተው
say they are with us,
ተዋግተን
and the second day they say they fought against us. All sorts of conflicting reports.
ንጹሐንን ማስጨረስ
killing
አሁን የማይካድራው በምን አማርኛ
civilians. How can you describe the situation that happened in Maikandra?
የታጠቁ እንኳን ቢሆኑ
These are totally
ምናልባት
unarmed civilians.
ምንም የማያውቁ ቀን ሰራተኞች
They're just daily laborers.
በቀን ሸቅለው የሚኖሩ ሰዎችን ሰብስበው
You gather them
በላባቸው የሚኖሩ
up,
ሰዎች ሰብስበው በጅምላ
daily laborers, and kill them in mass.
የፖለቲካ ሽንፈትና
This is
ውድቀት
political
የሞራል
destruction
ውድቀት
and
ያመጣል።
moral
ስብዕና
deprivation.
መጥፎ ድርጊት
It's terrible.
ወታደሩ
Within the
በዜጎቻቸው
military and
በነገራችን
also
ላይ
in the
በወታደሩ
civilians.
ብቻ
Not
አይደለም።
only, by the way, it's not only in
አካባቢ
military,
ካምፕ
but
አለ፣
in Shire
የስደተኞች
we
ካምፕ
have
በካምፕ
camps
የነበሩ
for refugees.
ሌላ ብሔር ተወላጆችን እንዲሁ አፍኖ አስሯቸው
They have also imprisoned people from there.
በዩኒቨርሲቲ የሰማችሁት ነው።
You've
ተማሪዎች
heard what they did in
በሙሉ የተሰራው
universities.
ስራ ዓላማው የነበረው
The purpose was
መጀመሪያ ሰሜን መምታት
to hit the northern division,
ጎንደርና ወልዲያን መያዝ
and also the second day take
ጎንደርና
Gondar and
መያዝ፣
Woldia
አዲስ
captive,
አበባ ላይ ባሉ ኤጀንቶች
and
አዲስ አበባ
using their
ይፈነዳል፣
agents in
አዳማ
Addis
ይፈነዳል፣
Ababa,
ይፈነዳል፣ አገር ይበጠበጣል። ከዛ በኋላ የፈለጉትን
use
ማድረግ
destruction in Adama, in
ይችላሉ።
Addis Ababa with
እዚህም
bombs,
ያሉ ኃይሎች
and those
የተዘጋጁ ነበር። መንግስት
in Addis Ababa, they were ready to act for them.
የመጀመሪያው ስራችን
So the
ጎንደርና
first work
ወልዲያን መያዝ እንዳይቻል
was to prevent any
ለዚህም አስቸኳይ ጊዜ አዋጅ
attack against Gondar and Woldia.
በማግስቱ
So the second day we came up with
የታጠቀ
a
ኃይል
law of
በአንድ
state of
ኮማንድ
emergency, came up with one
የኦሮሚያ
command
ልዩ
center,
ኃይል
so
በኦሮሚያ አካባቢ
Oromia
ያለው
Special
መከላከያ
Forces
ሙሉ በሙሉ ስለሚወጣ በርካታ ኃይል ስለሚወጣ
had,
ያን
had
ሸፍኖ
to cover for the defense
በዛ
force
የመጣውን
because the
ጠላት
defense force
እንዲመክት
had to relocate to north.
ሚሽን ተሰጠው። የመከላከያ የኦሮሚያ ልዩ ኃይል ከፍተኛ ውጊያዎች ሲያካሂድ ነበር።
So
ከፍተኛ
there was
ጥቃት ማድረስ ነበር።
a lot of attacks
ያ ባይሆን ኖሮ
by
መሀል
the
ሀገር እንታመስ ነበር
Oromia
ማለት ነው።
Special Forces defending
የአፋርና
the country
የአማራ ክልል
against
ልዩ ኃይሎች
anti-peace forces,
በተለይ በድንበር አካባቢ ላይ
and the Mahara Special Forces until the defense force comes
ጥቃት
to help.
የሚያጋጥማቸው ኤሪያዎች ላይ በከፍተኛ ተጋድሎ
They fought
ተከላክለው
fiercely defending themselves and the region,
የመስፋት ፍላጎት አስቆመዋል።
and they stopped the progress of the enemy in Benishangul.
ልዩ ኃይልና
Special
የፌዴራል ፖሊስ
forces and the federal police
በመተባበር ቤንሻንጉል
worked
አካባቢ
together
ያለውን ስራ
and handled the situation there.
ፌዴራል ፖሊስ
The federal
እዚህ ከተማ
police
ውስጥ ሆነው በፈንጅ በቦምብ
uh,
ሊያሰቃዩ የሚያስቡ ሰዎችን
were
ቀን ከሌት ፈትሸው እንዲያስፈቱ
dismantling
ሰጥተዋል።
forces that wanted to create havoc in the city.
ለእነዚህ ሁሉ ከፍተኛ ክብር
All these require a
በተለይ
great
በተለይ
honor,
የመከላከያ
especially
ኃይልን በሚመለከት
that of Defense Force,
የተከበረው ምክር ቤት
Honorable Parliament.
ብዙ ሀገራት
In many countries,
የመከላከያ ሰራዊት ዩኒፎርም ለብሰው
with
ታክሲ
uniforms,
የሚጠብቁ ከሆነ
when they stand for taxis, they give them
አውሮፕላን ተራ
preference.
የሚሄዱ ከሆነ
In the
ቅድሚያ
airports,
ይሰጣሉ።
they give them
ዩኒፎርም
preference
የሚከበርበት ምክንያት
because they respect the uniform, because in time of difficulty, it's quite costly. We don't really give them salaries,
ቢያንስ እንደ ሀገርና ሕዝብ መለየው የምናከብር
but as a nation,
ለሰልፎች
we
ቅድሚያ
should
የምንሰጥ
give honor
ውትድርና ለሀገር የሚከፈል
to
ዋጋ
soldiers,
መሆኑን
recognizing
ዜጎችና
that
የምናደርግ መሆን
they
አለብን።
pay the highest price
አለበለዚያ
for their country.
የኢትዮጵያ ጠላት እንደ ማሽሩም ነው።
Otherwise, Ethiopians have many enemies.
ይሄ ሲባል ይሄ
When
ነው።
you stop this, the other one comes
ይሄ
up.
ሀገር እንዲቀጥል
If we
ከፈለግን
want this country to
ለመከላከያ
continue,
ክብር መስጠት
we need to honor the defense
ይህን
forces.
ሁሉም ዜጎች ማድረግ አለባቸው። ማገልገልም አለብን፣ ማክበርም
So we
አለብን።
have to engage in the
ይህን
military
በማድረግ
and honor the military at the same time.
የሚገጥመንን ፈተና የምንወጣው
It's this way that we can
ጦርነቱን በሚመለከት ግን
defend
ከዚህ
further
ቀደሙ
attacks.
በግርድፉ ሳይሆን ትንሽ ገባ ገባ እያልኩ ለተከበረው ምክር ቤትና ኢትዮጵያ
concerning
መግለጽ
the,
እፈልጋለሁ።
the battle.
የመጀመሪያው ስራ
The first work that we
ወደ
engaged in
ጎንደርና
was
ጎጃም እንዳይስፋፉ
to
ማድረግ፣
stop them from encroaching Gondar and Gojam.
ወደ ኤርትራ እንዲያፈገፍግ ያዘዝነው ኃይል አለ።
And
መገናኛ የለም፣ ስልክ
there
የለም።
was a part of an army that we wanted them to flee to Eritrea, but communication was an issue.
በተለየ መንገድ ለመክፈት መሞከር
But
እንዲሸሹ
we tried to
ማድረግና
communicate
በኤርትራ
the
በኩል ደግሞ ሰው
command
በእግሩ ሄዶ
so that they would
ውጡ
flee to
እንዲላቸው መልዕክት ማድረስ ነው።
Eritrea.
ግን ምን ያክል ሰው እንደወጣ
We don't know how many have fled there because they have not received the command properly.
አንቀበልም ብለው የሰሜን እዝ አዛዥ
Northern Division head,
የተከበረው ምክር ቤት እንዲያውቅ
what I want the parliament to know,
ጀነራል ድርባ
General Direba,
የሰሜን እዝ አዛዥ
head of
ሆኖ እያገለገለ
Northern Division,
ውጊያው ከመፈጠሩ ከ15
15 days ahead of the war, he sat with a meeting there after they had lunch.
ጋር ምሳ በልቶ ይታመማል፣
He became ill, sick,
ራሱ ይስታል፣
became unconscious.
ጦር ኃይሎች ይገባል፣
He was
አብሮ የነበሩ
hospitalized,
ሰዎች አቅምሰውት ነው የሚል መረጃ
and
መጣ።
some say he was
እንደዚህ አይነት ነገር እንዳታወሩ፣
poisoned.
በሜዲካል ይጣራ።
And we said, no, let it be confirmed now. We didn't want the news to come out.
እስከዛ
General
ድረስ
Deriba, up until
ተነስቶ
this
ስራ መስራት
moment,
የሚችልበት
is
ደረጃ
not in a position to resume work.
እሱ ሲታመም
When he
ምንድን ነው
became
እኛ
sick,
ምደባ ይሄድ ነው
we-
እንጂ ምደባ ፈልገን
We
አይደለም።
wanted to replace him. That's
ለካ
why.
እሱን በማኮላሸት
But that was purposely done, and refusing the new leadership that they have conspired other
ዝም
moves.
ብለን ሰው መደብን።
So we assigned another person to replace him. They sent him back.
የሚሰራውን ጀነራል
So
ዳምጣ
they take captive the deputy leader, and they broke communication. You know the story.
እንዳይስፋፉ ማቆም።
So our first move was
ሮብ ዕለት
to stop their
ማክሰኞና
move
ሮብ የለም እኛ።
towards
መረጃ
Gondar
ማግኘት ችግር ነበር ለሊቱ ሙሉ።
and
ሮብ ዕለት ግን
Bajam.
ያን ጨርሰው
That was on
ወደ
Tuesday.
አማራ ክልል ጥቃት ጀመሩ፣ መከላከል
So
ጀመሩ።
we began defense work on Wednesday. We started to gather up our forces. After 1-2 days, we organized ourselves
እንዳልኳችሁ ድንበር ለመዝጋት
and
ሞከርን።
tried to close the borders.
ድንበር ለመዝጋት ከሞከርን
When
በኋላ
we did that,
የስበት ማዕከሉን ተረጋግቶ ማሰብ መምራት እንዳይችል እያጠቃን ከትግራይ ወደ ኤርትራ የሄደውን ጦር
the
ለማወቅ
force that fled to Eritrea, we wanted to know how many of our forces are in Eritrea. I went there taking 3 generals.
ጀነራሎች ይዘን የሄድንበት ዋና
The reason we
ምክንያት
did that was we wanted to see the situation of our
ያለበት ነገር
army
አውቀን ለማቀር ነው። ጦሩ
and
ጋር
to
ስንሄድ
design a plan. When we went there,
ከፍተኛ አሳዛኝ ነገር
what we
ስለነበረ
saw was
የማይሄደው
very tragic.
ጀነራል አበባው ታደሰ
General Ababao
ለአንድ
Tadesse
የመራው ያደራጀው ኃይል ነው።
is an army that he led for many
ጦሩ
years.
እሱን ሲያይ ሲያለቅስ
So when they saw the general,
የፈለግከውን
they
እርምጃ
began
ትወስድብኛል፣ አልመለስም።
crying.
የምገባው ከጦሩ ጋር አለ።
The general said, "I'm not coming back with you. I will stay with the army." General Getachew
ከትግራይ
Gudina,
ከወጣ 3 ወር አይሞላውም። የራሱ እዝ ነው።
it's his own army. It's his children that have been killed.
ከጦሩ ጋር አለቀሰ፣ አልመለስም አለ።
He cried there. He says, "I'm not coming up with the General Baj Adebele."
ሶስቱ ነበሩ የሄዱት።
The 3 of them went with me.
ጦሩ በጣም የሚያስፈልግ ጀግንነት
The
ነበር።
army had its
በተለይ አንዳንዶቹም በኋላ
spirit on. Some of it I would tell you later. They are still with their guns. Some of them they have even apprehended arms, and some were totally naked.
ይጠውላለጉ አሉ።
Some were
ልመናቸው በፍጥነት
very
የሚመራ
tired.
ወደ
So
ሕግና
their
ወደ
question
ፍትህ
was,
የሚል
take us back in. We want to fight this
በዚህ
junta.
ምክንያት የሚያስፈልጋቸውን የጎደላቸውን ካየን ከለየን
So
በኋላ
after doing situational analysis,
ምደባ አድርገን አስተካክለን
we
በዛ
came up with
ሳይድ
a new
ጥርጣሬም አልነበረውም።
organization.
አፍሪካ ያለውን ስለሚያስብ
But the enemy thought that that part was already dismantled. We assigned
በዚህ
leaders
የማጥቃትና ስበት ማዕከል እያዳከምን እዛ ስንደራጅ ቆየ።
and began to organize ourselves concerning the rockets.
ከሮኬት ጋር ቀድሜ
As
እንዳነሳሁላችሁ
I've mentioned earlier,
ኢትዮጵያ ያላት ሮኬቶች 100% እዛ ነው ያሉት።
our rockets are there 100%, and they are all from that part of Ethiopia. We wanted to bring the arms there, but we did not
ይሄ
succeed.
ሮኬት አደጋ ያስከትልብናል።
But now,
ያሰጋል።
recognizing that these rockets would be
ሮኬቱ
deadly,
እንዳይጠቀሙበት እናድርግ ብለን
let's
ስናጣራ
destroy
ሁለት
the
መረጃ
rockets.
ነው
And when we had information,
አንደኛው
one of it was
መቀሌ ያለው
the rocket in
ብዙ ኪሎ
Makale
ሜትር ድረስ መጓዝ
that
የሚችለው
can be reach 300 kilometers,
ሮኬቱ አለ።
the rocket is there,
ሮኬቱን የሚያስተኩስ መሳሪያ አለ።
and they can use it.
ሮኬቱ ያለው ከተማ
The
ውስጥ ነው።
rocket is in the city,
ማስተኮሻው ወጣ ይላል ትንሽ።
and the item they need to use it is out of Makale,
አድዋ ነው ያለው።
and the less powerful one is in Adwa and Metik.
ሁሉም ወታደራዊ ሰዎች እኔም ባለሁበት ተወያይተን
So we
ተነጋግረንበታል።
discussed and had a debated discussion. Let's hit it or not. There was a lot of debate.
የተከበረው ምክር ቤት
Honorable
ሊገነዘብ
Parliament
የሚፈልገው
must know
መቀሌ ላይ የተከማቸው ሚሳኤል
the missiles that was
ምናልባት
in
መቀሌ ሊያጠፋው
Makale.
ይችላል።
If we hit it, it can destroy the
ምን
whole city.
እንደሚያስከትል እርግጠኞች
We cannot be
አይደለንም
sure
የሚል
of
ሀሳብ
the outcomes.
አያጠፋውም ቴክኒካሊ ብሏል።
Some technical people
ሊያጠፋው
say it
ይችላል።
to not be destructive. Some
የሚል
technical
ስጋት
people
ያላቸው
say no, it could
ሪስክ
prove
ነው።
to be costly. It was
ማብለያውን
risky.
ብናጠፋ ይሄ እንዳይሰራ ማድረግ ይቻላል ስለተባለ ማብለያው ከከተማ ውጭ ነው።
So
ዜጎቻችን
the
አይጎዱም። ያ
item that
ይመታ።
couldn't
ከተማ ውስጥ ያለው ግን
trigger
እንዳይመታ
the rockets were out of
ተመቶ ሰዎቻችን ቢያልቁ
Tigray.
አደገኛ ስለሆነ አድዋ ላይ ያለው ግን ከተማ ውስጥ የቴክ
But
ካምፕ
in
ስለሆነ
Adwa, the rockets
እሱ ላይ
are
ከተኮሰ
in Metek.
በከፍተኛ ደረጃ
If
አድዋን
we
ያጠፋ
if we
ይችላል
destroy
የሚል
that,
ስጋት
it would
ስለነበረ
destroy the city.
እንደዚህ አይነት ሪስክ እኛ
So we didn't want to go into such
ከተማ
a
ውስጥ
risk.
ቢሆን ጥሩ ነው። ከተማ ውስጥ ከሆነ አናርግ ብለን በፍጥነት ጠላት ተዘጋጅቶበታል። ከቦታ ቦታ እየቀያየረ ያው እንደምታውቁት የውር ድንብር ሙከራዎች አድርጓል። ሮኬቱን ይህን ካደረግን በኋላ የተከተልነው አካሄድ ሳያውቁ የተከላከሉ ኃይሎች እጃቸው መስጠት
The groups that were defending without knowing, we gave them a chance to give in,
ከተማ ውጊያ እንዲቀር ማድረግ
to stop
ዜጎቻችን እንዳይጎዱ
wars in the urban,
ሰክሰስፉሊ
to
የሰራነው
protect our citizens from the consequences,
በአጭር ጊዜ እንዲጠናቀቅ ማድረግ
and also to make sure the conflict, the war ends very soon,
በከፍተኛ ደረጃ እንዲቀንስ ማድረግ
and also to deteriorate the capacity of the enemy to defend itself.
የጁንታው ኃይል
The force of the junta,
ከሽራሮ የሁመራን ፓርት ሳይጨምር
disregarding Humara,
መቀሌ ለመግባት 15 ዓመት የፈጀበት
took it 15 years to get to Mekelle.
በ15 ቀን ነው እኛ የገባነው።
We've been able to do that in 15 days.
እኛም በእግር ነው የገባነው፣ እሱም በእግር ነው
They
የገባነው።
walked, we walked.
ጀግና መከላከያ ሰራዊት
The victorious defense force from the tip of Gondar to Shirre walked. They didn't use cars. Some of you said we delayed, but they walked. The road is tiring. You won't even drive a Land Cruiser. It's really tiring. They walked.
ይሄን ለማድረግ የተከተልነው
In order to do this,
አስተላለፍ አደረጃጀት
our strategy,
አነሳላችኋለሁ። እንትና ወጋ እንትና
I'll
ወጋ
explain it in detail so you know the truth.
ሳተናው ጀነራል
General Belai,
ልብ ቆራጡ
the victorious General Masala,
የመጀመሪያ የመከላከል ስራ በጎንደር በኩል
did the first defense
ሁመራ የመያዙን ስራ
on the side of Gondar and also the occupation of Humara, together with their counterparts.
ሳተናው በላይ
Satanao Belai and victorious Masala are the children of Ethiopia. They never had a consultant, they never had a different force, but
ትንታጉ
they
ጀነራል
walked in.
በምዕራብ ግንባር
Our general in the west
የወጣውን የኢትዮጵያ ወታደር አደራጅቶ አስታጥቆ
assembled
ሽራሮን
the army
መጀመሪያ እኛ ምሽግ
first,
ቦታዎቹ እንግዲህ
controlled our trench.
አታውቋቸውም። በጣም
You
ብዙ
don't
ሰዎች
know
አሉ።
them in detail.
ነገመሃሎ
We
የምታውቁ ከሆነ
if you know
እነ
Nagahalo,
እነ ቢያራ
Badme, Biara,
እነዚህን ይዞ
it
ሽራሮን
controlled
እንዲቆጣጠር
these places and controlled Shiraro. And this was the mission given to General Abao.
ሁመራን
General Belai
ጎሹን ይዘው
controlled Shiraro and crossed Takaze
አበባው ኃይል ጋር እንዲቀላቀሉ ተደረገ።
and joined General Ababao's forces.
ሽራሮን የያዘው አበባው ነው።
Abao controlled Shiraro. Humara was controlled by Belai and
ይህ ኃይል
Masala.
ተደምሮ ነው ሽሬን የያዘው።
These
አክሱም
forces
የያዘው።
combined controlled Shiraro and Aksum.
በራማና
Between
እዛ አካባቢ
Rama and the area and the conflicts that took place, General Bacha organized the forces.
ባጫ ሚሽን
The mission
ወደ
given to
ጦር
Bacha
ሜዳውን አድዋ ሜዳውን
was
ቦታው መጀመሪያ ምሽጋችንን መያዝና
to control
ሽሬ ሲጠጋ ያኛው ኃይል
Techo area
አድዋን መቁረጥ ነው።
and to cut on Adwa.
በዛላምበሳ በኩል ያለውን
On the side of Zalambasa,
ከመያዙ በፊት
before controlling it,
የተሰጠው ሚሽን
General Bacha was given a mission, Sorana,
ኃይል ማደራጀትና
to
ጀምር ሲባል
organize forces
መሄድ ነው።
to
እነሱ
start
የሚጠበቁ ኃይሎች አሉ።
attacking when it's given
በዛላምበሳ በኩል
orders.
ጅብላ
From the side
ጀነራል
of
ጌታቸው
Zalambasa, General
የወጣውን
Getachew
ኃይል አደራጅቶ
organized the
በከፍተኛ
forces
ጀግንነትና ቆራጥነት
and was
Zalambasa
victorious and
አፍሪካ
zealous motion controlled
ነው ሚሽን የተሰጠው።
Zalambasa. That was the mission given to him.
ልክ የነ ጀነራል በላይና አበባው ሽሬ ሲደርስ የአድዋው
When the other forces reached Shiraro, the other forces were strong enough and to reach at their places because we assembled forces in different locations. From the east,
በተለይ ከባድ መሳሪያን
especially
በማስተባበር
in organizing heavy
ወታደራዊ
artilleries.
ጀነራል አለምሸት ነበር።
General Alamshet was in command.
ከሱ ጋር
Together with him,
ነጎድጓዱ ጀነራል ሰለሞን
General Solomon
ጀነራል ዘውዱ ነበሩ።
and General Zaudu
ይሄ
were
አስተዳደር
together.
ቋሚ አይደለም።
This was not a permanent assignment.
አንድ ቦታ ሲያዝ የጀመርነው በዚህ መንገድ ቢሆንም በኋላ
However, we started this way. There were
ቶሎ
shifts.
ሲፈለጉ አንዳንዶቹ ወደ ሌላ
When we went in them in different fronts, we were reshuffling them.
ምርጫው ቤዝ ያደረገው
The
እያንዳንዱ
choice based on an understanding of each mountain,
መሽለኪያ ቦታዎች
the height, and the passes.
ሳተናው ጀነራል አበባው
General Ababao,
ከኤርትራ ጋር በነበረው ውጊያ
in a war between Eritrea, knows
ዝርዝር የሚያውቀው ነው።
every detail in the area, the
እንዲሁም
terrain,
ጀነራል ጌታቸው
and General
ዛላምበሳ
Getachew
አካባቢ
also
ያኔም
understands
ከዛ በኋላ
Zalambasa and the area.
ጠላት
Therefore,
ከሚያውቀው ያልተናነሰ
We know that they know it,
እውቀት
if
ይዘው
not equal,
ውጊያውን
if not better, equally as the enemy.
ተራራ ቦታዎች በመለየት
They were able to
ለማካሄድ
identify terrains and difficult locations, and we used them for that.
እዚህ ድል ቁርሱ ጀነራል ብርሃኑ ጁላ
General Brahanu Jula, the victorious,
ይዞ
had two
እጅግ የሚያስደምሙ
forces
24 ሰዓት ከሲቹዌሽን ሩም የማይወጡ
that never left the situation room for 24 hours.
በኮማንድ ፖስት
These
አጠቃላይ
generals,
ሂደቱን ሲመራ ቆይቷል። ከነዚህ
he was
ውስጥ
leading
አንዱ
the forces,
ሀገር ወዳዱ
using these
ጀነራል
forces.
ዮሐንስ ይገኝበታል። በሀገሩ የማይደራደረው ጀነራል ዮሐንስ
General Johannes is amongst them.
አነፍናፊውና
He doesn't
የጠላትን ኮቴ የሚከተለው ጀነራል አስራት
compromise the issue of his country.
ካርታውን
General
እንደ ምድር
Asrat,
የሚያነበው
who
ሶስተኛ
reads
መኮንኑ ጀነራል ተስፋዬ
the map like a ground, General
ሎጂስቲክስን
Tasfaye,
የሚያሳልጠው
the
ጀነራል
logistics head, General
የሰብአዊ
Abdurrahman,
ከፍተኛ ደረጃ
human resource,
የሚያመጋግበው ጀነራል ሀጫሉ
General Hachalu,
የጠላትን አቅም የሚገነባው ጀነራል ሀሰን
General Hassan, who builds the force against the enemy, and others were under the command post in true missions, were engaged in the war. One thing I don't want to leave without mentioning here is that one
አርድ አንቀጥቅጡ ጀነራል ይልማ
General Yilma,
የአየር ኃይል አዛዥ
leader of the Air Force,
በከፍተኛ ደረጃ ጀግኖችን ተዋጊዎች ይዞ
led his victorious
ባሰብነው
team
ባቀድነው ልክ ጦርነቱ ሊጠናቀቅ ከፍተኛ ተጋድሎ
and
ፈጽሟል።
sacrificed to complete the
ንስሩ
mission on time.
ጀነራል ሹማና
General
General
Shuma
Bakala
and General Brahanu Bakala
ስፔሻል ፎርስን በማደራጀት በነገራችን ላይ
organized the
ስፔሻል
special
ፎርሶች
forces.
ስለ ጀግንነት
The
አላወራም።
special forces
የኢትዮጵያ አርቲስቶች፣ የኢትዮጵያ ጸሐፊዎች
victoriousness, I will not say much about it.
በዓለም ላይ የማታገኙት
Our
ጀግንነት
authors,
ተፈጽሟል።
our musicians, you have a work to do there.
እኔ ጀግንነት ብዬ ላወራው የምችለው
What I
ከሌላ
call
ሀገር
victory would be if we were fighting against any other country, but it was within ourselves. The ones who died and the ones who killed are, of course, our own. But the special force in Mekelle
መቀሌ ለመቆጣጠር ያደረገው ጀግንነት
made sure we controlled the city without killing a single
በሁመራ ላይ
person.
የነበረው ምሽግ
In Humera,
ይህ
it
special
destroyed a
አንድ
trench.
ሰው ሰውቶ ብርጌድ አፍርሷል።
Only one person was
በፊልም
sacrificed.
ካልሆነ በስተቀረ
Unless you make a
ጀግንነት
movie out of it, it's difficult to talk the victoriousness of these people.
የሄደው ስፔሻል ፎርስ
The special force that went
ፊት
there
ለፊት ያየውን ጠላት አልዋጋም ብሎ
denied fighting the forces in front of it and
ውጊያ
infiltrated
የተኮሰው ውጊያውን
all the way in,
ከሚያቋርጡ በኋላ
and the shots were fired from the back.
ጠላት ጨርሶ በትኖ ጥይት ጨርሶ
They finished their bullets
እጁ
after
ተናንቆ
removing the
ከተጠላት
enemies,
ተማገናል።
and some of them fought and took guns from the enemies.
በዚያ መንገድ ነው 15 ቀን
This
የፈጀው።
is
በ15
how
ቀን
they
ወደ
completed it in 15
የ15
days.
ዓመቱ ማለት ነው።
A 15 years war in 15
እዚህ
days.
ውስጥ ብዙ መጠቀስ ያለባቸው ሰዎች ቢኖሩም
Despite the fact that we have to
General
mention a lot of
Girma
people
Kababo,
here, General Girma
የሰባተኛ
Kababo, the
አዛዥ
7th Brigade Commander,
ክፍለ ጦሩ እየተዋጋች እስከደረስንበት ቀን ድረስ እሞታለሁ እንጂ መሳሪያዬን አልሰጥም ብሎ
decided not to give in his ammunition and weapons till the last moment and fought with its force and entered
መሸፈን
Eritrea.
ያልቻለውን አቃጥሎ
And the weapons he couldn't carry, he burned it down. When we went to Eritrea, we didn't expect to see that many weapons. General Mulalam, 5th Brigade, in the area of Humara, was fighting until the point possible. Badame 8th Brigade Commander General Nasr Abadiga used all its force till the end and controlled Shiraro. We have this kind of incredible people that don't care much about their lives. Had Ethiopia not had these children, it would have changed where we are right now. It would have made our country like other countries. The role of the people of Tigray in all this and their victoriousness, their love for the country, I want the Honorable House to take it into consideration. At the time of the conflict, there was a person who was shot because he denied or he opposed killing of the army. There are Tigrayans who left to Eritrea who didn't want to see the war. There were others who joined the defense force and fought in the war. This is the issue of Ethiopianism vis-a-vis the junta. When we reached Shire, we received 200 weapons. When we reached Aksum, 40 injured persons were given to us by the people. We had discussions in Mekelle yesterday. They said, "You're late. Now that you are here, please give us electricity and telecom. We want to get back to our lives." The forces disintegrated into different parts in order to stop them from further actions and attacks. They said, "Please create a new administration." They received us with warm hands. The army loved its country and didn't cause any destructions. We didn't only fight on the ground. As I've said earlier, in the army, when the captain, the commander, and everyone leaves, we didn't have a commander or a leader. Diplomatic actions were lobbying on the part of the enemy in different parts of the world. They were lobbying on the media also. The war was on all fronts. And most of our friends started pressuring us to get into discussions. As this honorable house knows, we love to discuss. We hate war. We know its consequences. We begged until the time they attacked us. But after that, controlling Gondar, Waldia, that was what's left to say. It was not the issue of the army only. When tensions grew, they started resorting politics. And if that's the case, you don't attack the northern division. No country will do this. If the army is attacked in any country will respond furiously. We know diplomacy. Ethiopia is a country that established the United Nations. Ethiopia is a country that established the African Union. You cannot tell us about multilateralism. We're known by peace. In Korea, in different parts of Africa.
ግን ለወዳጆቻችን
We
መንገር
served for
የምፈልገው
peace.
ነገር
What we want to tell our
ወዳጅ መሆን
friends is
ከፈለጋችሁ
that
ከእኛ ጋር
if you
እኛንም
want to be
ማወቅ
friends
አለባችሁ።
with us, you have to understand us also.
እኛ ምንም ድሃ ብንሆን መንግስት
We could be
መሆን
poor,
በጣም ብዙ
but
ዓመታት
we have
አንዳንዶቻችሁ ሳትፈጠሩ መንግስት
years
የነበረን
of
ሀገር ነን።
experience in being a government.
እናንተ
More than some of
ሳትቆሙ
your
ሀገር
countries.
የነበረን ሀገር
We've
ነን።
been countries before your countries.
ሀገርና መንግስት ግራ የሚገባን ህዝቦች አይደለም።
We don't confuse a country and a government. We want you to understand
እንኳን
that.
ዛሬ የዛሬ 100 ዓመት
Not today, even 100 years ago,
ልግዛችሁ ብሎ አይ እኛ ሞታችንን እንመርጣለን እንጂ አንገዛም ብለን እኮ ብቸኛ
we gave our neck to be
ይህን
free
ከረሳችሁ
from
ማስታወስ
colonialism.
ያስፈልጋል።
You don't have to forget that.
ሶስተኛው
And the third one is
በግል የተከበሩ አፈ ጉባኤ ክብራቸው
Honorable Speaker of the House,
ውዳሴያቸው የኢትዮጵያ ህልውና ነው።
his
በመደለያ በኢትዮጵያ ህልውና
victory
የሚደራደር ኢትዮጵያዊ
is
ማለት ነው።
Ethiopia. No individual will sell his or her country for their benefit.
ሰላም ወዳድ መሆናችን ለሰላም
We
የምንተጋ
love
መሆናችንን
peace, we
ተገንዝባችሁ
work for peace, and you have to
የእኛን
understand
ነገር
that.
አውቃችሁ
And if you understand
በትብብር
what's
መንፈስ
ours,
እንስራ እንጂ
you should collaborate with us.
ደህንነት አይደለም የደህንነት ይመጣ ክብሩን አሳልፎ መስጠት የሚፈልግ
No
ኢትዮጵያ
matter poverty we're in, will not give in our pride to others.
እንግዲህ ይሄን ነገር ደግሞ እንዳትፈርዱብን የኛ ጥፋት
Don't
አይደለም።
blame us. It's not our
አባቶቻችን
fault.
በደም ውስጥ ያሳለፉብን አንችልም።
This is in our blood, transmitted from our
አንችልምና
fathers.
በሳንቲም ማስፈራራት ለኢትዮጵያ አይሰራም። ኢትዮጵያ ጋር
Well,
ተከባብረን
money will not pressure us. You can only work together with us.
ኢትዮጵያን ኢትዮጵያዊ እያለ ማሸነፍ
You
አይቻልም።
cannot win Ethiopia
ካለቅን በኋላ የፈለገውን ማድረግ ይችላል።
when you have Ethiopians
ኢትዮጵያዊ
living
እያለ
here.
ማንም ማሸነፍ አይችልም። ዛሬም ወደፊት
Today or tomorrow. You can't win as long as Ethiopians live on this
በዚህ
land.
መንገድ ማሰብ ተገቢ አይደለም።
We don't want you to
ተጨንቀን
think
ተመርዘን
that
ህዝብ
way.
ማስከበር ስንሞክር እኛም ማድመጥ አስፈላጊ
You
ነው።
have to listen to us when we try to enforce
ይሄ
the law.
ለቅኖቹ ወዳጆቻችን
This is for the good friends.
እዚህ ውስጥ ደግሞ የተደበቀ አጀንዳ አለ።
And there are others with hidden agenda.
የተደበቀው አጀንዳ
The hidden agenda is, I don't want to mention names, but our neighbors, all of them
የደመቀ ኃይልና የአብይ ኃይል የሚባል ያላቸው ነው።
have powers of Damaka and powers of Abiy.
ደመቀ የአንተ ወታደሮች እዛ አስጠጋ።
They'll say, Damaka, move your forces here, Damaka, move your forces there.
ደመቀና አብይ አልተግባቡም።
They keep saying Damaka and Abiy are not in agreement, let's have meeting in Kigali and so on and so on. That's impossible to repeat in Ethiopia.
ኢትዮጵያ አንድ መንግስት
Ethiopia
አለ።
has one government,
መንግስቱ ህግ ያከብራል።
and that government respects the law,
ለህግ ይገዛል።
upholds the rule of law,
ተጠያቂ ይጠየቃል።
and can be
ለዜጎቹ ክብር
asked
ይሰጣል።
according to the law and
በተቻለ
gives respect to its
ኢትዮጵያን
people.
የመሰለ
As much as possible, it will create a democracy that looks like Ethiopia. We don't want to look like others. We want to look like ourselves.
እንጂ እንደ እንትና ሀገር የእንትናና የእንትና ኃይል እያልን
We will not
እያጫወትን
have forces like other countries, competing forces.
ሀሳብ ያለባችሁ ሰዎችም እርሱ
And those
በኢትዮጵያ
forces or those parties that has this
እንጂ
kind of understanding,
ኃይል
please drop it.
ምን እያደረገ እንደመጣ
Otherwise,
ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ምን እየሰራ እንደመጣ የማይገነዘብ
there is no international government that does not understand what we have been doing. You heard my Kadra.
ማይካድራን ሰምተን
We heard about my Kadra.
የሰሜን ህዝብ ምክትል አዛዥም ታፍኖ
We heard about our general
ሬሳ ራቁቱን ተኝቶ
being
በማያውቀው
taken
ሰው ተጠርቶ ማለት ነው።
and corpse left on the streets.
ሰዎች ራቁታቸውን ሄደው ተነጋገሩ። ከማን ጋር ከማን ጋር
With those
እንነጋገር?
conditions, we can't have discussions. With who?
በእርግጥ
Perhaps
የተከበረው ምክር ቤት
the
እንዲገባው
Honorable House needs to understand the government of Ethiopia has been having discussions even during the time of war. In the past 2-3 weeks, while we're still into war, we're having dialogues. These dialogues were made with Dr. Mulu, who is the legal authority in Tigray. What will we do in Tigray? The first one is enforce the law. 2, don't fight in the city so the people won't be affected. Citizens will be okay then. And 3, start rehabilitating the regions, the cities as soon as you occupy them. That was the mission given to us. We based on that.
ተደራደርክምና ድርድር የለም የሚባል ነገር ስህተት ነው።
We cannot.
ከህጋዊ
The
ጋር
fact that we
ስንደራደር
didn't sit and on a dialogue with enemies and with criminals
ወደፊትም ይቀጥላል።
does not make it that we were not interested in a dialogue.
አይጠቅምም። እኛ አንፈልግም ውጊያ።
Somali and regions also said we need peace.
ፈልገው ማለት እኮ የራስን ፍላጎት
The fact that they said they need peace is an expression of their interest. It does not, however, mean that when you are attacked, definitely the scenarios will change, the responses will change. There are a lot of pressures, a lot of things are said that required its own war. This or that, we want you to understand we need peace, but if our sovereignty is affected, we will act.
ወንጀለኞች ለህግ ማቅረብ በሚባል የተነሱ ሀሳቦች
The other one is bringing criminals to court,
የሽብር ስራ የሰሩ
was engaged in terrorism,
የደፈሩ ብዙ ስራ የሰሩ ሰዎች አሉ።
killed and so on, different crimes.
ከኦፕሬሽኑ ጋር በደንብ ተግባብተን ማየት አስፈላጊ
We have to see it in line with the operation. The first one and our own first objective is freeing those taken and returning the tanks taken from us.
በሺ የሚቆጠር ቁስለኛ
Thousands of injured persons came back. We still have forces with them. Those who are killed, we have taken control of our camps and government institutions. For instance, after controlling Mekelle, the army said, let me start searching. We said no.
መከላከያው ስልጠናው ብቃቱ ለመዋጋት ነው።
The army is only trained to fight, not to search. So they might cause damages.
ከመከላከያ ውስጥ አንዱ የሆነ ነገር ቢያነሳ ሊያቀያይም
If an army member takes something there,
የሰለጠነ ፌዴራል ፖሊስ
it
ገብቶ
could quarrel our relationship. So we'll send trained persons later. Not even a single defense force entered the city.
ከተማ ውስጥም
And in fact, in the cities they controlled, they haven't done anything that has to do with search and seizure.
መቀሌ ስንቃረብ
When we reached Mekelle,
ኩያ አካባቢ ነጃሽ
an area of Kwe and Najash, Wukro, whether you believe it or not, the farmers
ማሳሰብ ነበር።
were harvesting as if nothing happened. They knew it was their own force. There was nothing unique. They knew the propaganda.
ሁለተኛው አልቲማተም
The second ultimatum was
72 ሰዓት ሰጥተናል።
we gave them
ለምን
272 hours.
ለምን
Why?
ተራዘመ?
Why did you extend it? These are the questions raised from people.
ብዙ ዓላማ ነው ያለው።
These had several objectives. The extension had objectives.
አንደኛው
The first one is
ወደ መቀሌ የተቃረብን
when we reached Mekelle,
በዚያ ፍጥነትና ሞራል የመጣው ኃይል
the force that approached with that power assumed the junta was in Mekelle. So we needed to slow down and work on the emotions. Otherwise, we might regret our actions.
ሁኔታውን አገኘው እያለ
They may march in assuming they handled or they are arresting the junta.
በተለየ መንገድ
Therefore, we needed to have a special plan to avoid damages. The second one,
እያጠፋ ስለሚሄድ
the junta were destroying wherever they went. So we thought they might even do something in Mekelle.
የማይፈልጉ በጣም
And the
በርካታ
third
ሰዎች
one is there are several people who doesn't want
ለእነሱም
war.
ትዕግስት ያስፈልጋል።
At a grassroots level. So we needed to give them time to give in.
ገባ እናውቃለን፣ መያዝ
We
እንደምንችል
knew we could control it,
አውጥተን
but we wanted a plan. We wanted to calm down. We wanted to have the necessary forces with the necessary responsibilities. That's why we delayed.
በአጭር ጊዜ ብለናል።
We said in a short period, and we completed it in a short period.
ጥፋት ያመጣል።
Expedited, it could cause a problem. If we go late, it could also cause damages. So we completed it in time.
መከላከያ
Perha-
ሁለት
In
ሳምንት
fact, the defense force
አቅርቧል።
had in its mind that it would complete the operation in 2 weeks.
ቅድም እንዳልኳችሁ ተተንትኖ ታይቶ
The government analyzed
እንዲራዘም ተደርጓል። ምክንያቱም
and extended it after doing analysis because we wanted to avoid distractions.
ቀጣይ ያለው ስራ ወንጀለኞች ከተደበቁበት
The way
እያወጡ
forward is arresting criminals
ተሰባስበው
from wherever they are. They went to a certain location.
የሚል
Who
ነገርም
they
ያነሳል።
have feelings that they can fight,
ታዲያ ያለባቸው ከራሳቸው ጋር ነው።
but they have to fight within themselves, within their own perception of killing,
ህዝብ
looting,
ከሚያሳባቸው ጋር መታገል ያለባቸው።
and causing disagreements between people. And the use of Tigray should not be siding with them. They can win prosperity if they want, not through war, but through peace and through election. This is why we're only fighting using ballots, not bullets.
በነገራችን ላይ እነዚህ ሰዎች 40 ምናምን ዓመት እንዋጋ እያሉ የትግራይ ወጣትን እያስጨረሱ አንዳቸውም ሳይሞቱ አገር ሰላም ገቡ። አሁን አስጨርሰው
not a single of them died, but they just said, let's fight, meaning protect us. We don't want to die, just protect us. But who is naive to die for them to live? If they were really courageous, instead of leaving the people of Makale, they should have fought there themselves and sacrificed their lives. They leave the fighting for others and they flee for dear life. If the surrender would take them to court, we're following them up, they cannot go far. It's good if they give up themselves, they never die. From palace, when they leave, they said would administer the country from Addis. They said when they left, forget it, would be in Makale, and now they moved to Agar Salam, and that does not go a long way. Following work is building Tigray. Tigrayan people is under ration with lots of difficulties. This ration is getting lower, smaller, sorry. So we need to address this dire economic situations. We need to support and organize the country concerning refugees. They say some 30,000 people have left the country. As the parliament knows, this path of reform, millions of people had been displaced, and we reorganized, brought people back. So we have the experience in various. We can do this in a week. The UN, the Sudan government, and our door is open. Let's work together to bring our people back. They are our citizens. But we have one problem. There's no women, there's no children. It's just the young that is called refugee. Who are these young people? Then time will tell. In Maikandra, if they have killed people in Maikandra, and if there is evidence, they will be held legally accountable. If it's an innocent citizen, tomorrow morning. There's a committee set up, we're ready. If the world wants to assist, our doors are open. We don't want our people to leave out of Ethiopia, but 30,000 is not too much, because we have dealt with millions of internally displaced people. There are some people that want to magnify for political gain this incident. Political discussion in Tigray with the legal, apart from legal parties from Ararat, Tigray political parties, Prosperity Party, and other legal entities, apart from them. Nobody else can administer the country. Tigray is an honored people, they can administer themselves now that they are free from repression. They will conduct an election with its own people, and they will have their own self-administration. The junta would be handled by the continuing operation. Even for the junta, I have an advice. In order to save one or two people, to individuals, all this happened. When it comes to politics, 30 or 40 people that we want to apprehend. So 30, 40 people to save their lives, they should not create the destruction of many youth people. They will be held accountable. So a lot of work needs to go into it. We'll continue building, stabilizing, bringing peace, Apart from that, we will work to make sure that the coming election will be democratic. For Ethiopia, democracy is the real healing medicine. It has to be accountable, free and fair elections as per rules and regulations of the electoral board. We all need to be held accountable to that, and the parliament must do a follow-up and monitoring work towards this, and would work for the people of Tigray. It's good that we have a very good relationship with our neighbors, and this will continue in the future. The people of Ethiopia would galvanize together to rebuild Tigray. Having assessed the damage, the government and the people at large need to engage in the rebuilding process of Tigray. And lastly, for foreigners and also for those within the country, the message that I have is from out of Ethiopia, that want to engage in any collaboration. We're free, but those in conspiracy and integrities, those forces that want to defeat Ethiopia, let them learn from history. It's impossible, but in a peaceful manner, diplomatic routes, the door is open. That's the message I have for foreigners and for those within the country. The advice that I have concerning the junta, I don't have a personal animosity and hatred to anybody there. It's with the mentality and with the works that I am against. If we remove one junta and come up with another one, it would be a total loss. It is this junta that created ethnic difference and animosity. If we hate each other on ethnic basis, then we become another junta. So Tigrayans, both in Tigray and in other parts of Ethiopia that are not linked with the junta, they are Ethiopians. We need to protect them. We need to honor them. If we don't do that, we just change the players. That's all we can do. So a lot of care needs to go into that, be it in defense forces, police, and also civilian work. And we need to give them protection. And some Tigrayans have been forced to leave out of their work, and what they themselves need to know and the parliament need to do is there's a lot of destruction in Tigray, mass killings, and we need to, like army members, we need to protect them maybe against any revenge. And second one is many had a role one way or the other in the evil acts perpetrated in the northern part of Ethiopia. So we have to learn from the experience in Maikandra. So because of these two reasons, actions have been made and would continue to look into this situation carefully. Winning a battle has its own negative consequences. We have had a powerful victory, but if it creates pride and arrogance on our part, then it would be destructive. I believe it is truth that won. It is the prayer and the tears of the mothers of Ethiopia. The rest of us need to be humble. We should not hate. We should not engage in victory songs, because the major battle is in front of us. The battle against poverty. If we persist in poverty, we are doomed to engage in other battles in our parts. If Junta X is demolished, Junta Y would come into pass. If we are to come out of the history of war, we have to forge ahead in speed towards development and prosperity. So this spirit of conviction that Ethiopians showed in this battle must be repeated in the battle to come out of poverty. We need to come out of being paupers. We can change ourselves. We have the capacity, we have the clarity in agriculture, industry, in cities. We need to, it takes a process. Development can be done by Ethiopians themselves. others can only support. We cannot prosper out of begging. So in order to avoid conflicts, ethnic conflicts, this should be a matter of history, and in a concerted manner we need to engage in our path of development and peace. The Ethiopian people must cooperate along these lines. Ethiopia may continue to prosper by the authority of the people, and its survival would be maintained, ensured by the concerted efforts of its people. Thank you. I want to thank His Excellency the Prime Minister for the adequate explanations he gave. Let's honorably see him off now. The second meeting, extraordinary meeting, is now adjourned.